Hey there, if you're enjoying this journey through time, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Your thoughts help us uncover more hidden stories. Let's ease into the world of the ancient Mississippian mound builders, far beyond the myths that have woven themselves into the fabric of history, in the bustling heart of 12th century CE Cahokia. Imagine a gentle dawn breaking over the vast river valley where the Mississippi's waters murmur softly against the banks, carrying whispers of a bygone era. The air is cool and damp, filled with the earthy scent of freshly turned soil and the faint sweet aroma of blooming wildflowers that nod in the breeze. Here, in this serene expanse, a community stirs to life, their days dedicated to a harmonious rhythm of creation and connection. The mound builders, clad in simple deerskin tunics softened by years of wear, move with purposeful grace as they shape the land into enduring monuments. These garments, dyed in subtle shades of earth and river clay, brush against their skin like a familiar embrace, a testament to the materials drawn from the world around them. In the soft light of morning, groups of men and women gather, their voices blending into a low, soothing hum as they plan their work. There's a quiet wisdom in their movements, a subtle wit in the way they tease the stubborn clumps of soil, as if sharing a secret joke with the earth itself. The builders work in unison, their hands calloused yet careful, scooping and patting the muddy earth into form. Picture the sensation. Cool, slick clay slipping between fingers, the satisfying squish underfoot as they tread paths worn smooth by generations. The grass rustles lightly in the wind, a gentle lull that accompanies their efforts, while birdsong drifts from the treetops, weaving a natural symphony that eases the mind into a state of peaceful focus. This communal endeavor was the heartbeat of Cahokia, a place where hundreds, perhaps thousands, came together not out of obligation, but from a shared sense of purpose that bound them like the roots of ancient trees. Families and neighbors formed lines, passing baskets of loam and gravel from one to another, their steps synchronized in a dance as old as the river itself. The air hums with the steady rhythm of their breathing, in and out, like the tide of the Mississippi flowing nearby. Each mound rose slowly, layer by layer, a collective breath made manifest, with children sometimes joining in, their laughter, a soft ripple that adds a touch of lightness to the scene. The builders' tunics, adorned with simple patterns from pressed leaves or dyed fibers, fluttered slightly in the breeze, reminding all of the natural world they so revered. As the sun climbs higher, casting a warm glow over the valley, the sensory tapestry deepens. The earth beneath their feet releases a rich, loamy perfume with each turn of the spade, a scent that evokes the cycle of seasons and the promise of renewal. One might hear the faint trickle of a nearby stream, its waters cool and clear, where builders pause to refresh themselves, the liquid gliding over their hands like a soothing balm. In these moments, the work feels less like labor and more like a meditative ritual, a way to connect with the land and each other. The mounds, though simple in their early stages, begin to take shape as gentle swells against the horizon, their curves mirroring the rolling hills and the serpentine river. The mystery of these builders lingers like a soft fog over the valley, an enigma that invites quiet reflection. We know their names were never etched into stone or recorded in the annals of time, lost to the winds that sweep across the plains. Yet, in this absence, there's a poetic beauty, a subtle wit in the universe's design that leaves room for imagination. Who were they, these artisans of earth whose identities faded like evening shadows? Perhaps they found solace in anonymity, their legacy preserved not in words but in the very soil they molded. Archaeological whispers from Cahokia's sites reveal tools and remnants, stone hoes polished by use, woven baskets frayed at the edges that speak of skilled hands and shared knowledge. Reports from excavations paint a picture of a society where every member contributed, their efforts a tapestry of cooperation that sustained the community through the cycles of planting and harvest. Envision the scene at midday when the sun's warmth kisses the worker's skin, and the air carries the subtle tang of perspiration mixed with the sweetness of nearby berry bushes. The builders pause briefly, sharing simple meals of roasted nuts and river fish, the flavors earthy and comforting, as they exchange stories in hushed tones. These tales, passed down through generations, weave a narrative of unity, of how the mounds served as gathering places for ceremonies that celebrated the earth's bounty. The communal effort extended beyond the physical act. It was a way of life, where elders guided the young with gentle nods and soft-spoken words, ensuring that the knowledge of shaping the land endured. As afternoon light filters through the leaves, casting dappled patterns on the growing mounds, the sensory details sharpen. The cool breeze carries the distant call of waterfowl, their wings cutting through the air with a whisper, while the mud's texture, grainy yet yielding, offers a tactile satisfaction that soothes the soul. The builder's deerskin tunics, now speckled with soil, move fluidly with their bodies, a reminder of the harmony between human endeavor and nature's gifts. In this era, the mounds were not just structures. They were symbols of collective aspiration, rising from the ground as if breathed into existence by the community itself. Through the lens of archaeology, we glimpse the intricacies of their world, with artifacts like clay pots and shell beads hinting at a culture rich in trade and innovation. Yet, it's the mystery of the unnamed that adds a layer of intrigue, a gentle puzzle that invites us to ponder without urgency. Why did they leave no names? Perhaps in their view, the true legacy lay in the act itself, in the shared effort that outlasted individual lives. This unrecorded aspect, distinct from other tales of Cahokia, serves as a calming thread, drawing us into a narrative where the unknown fosters peace rather than curiosity. As the day wanes, the golden hues of sunset bathe the valley in a tranquil glow, and the builders step back to admire their progress. The rustling grass settles into a hushed whisper, the muddy earth cooling under the evening stars. It's a scene of quiet accomplishment, where the communal spirit lingers like a soft lullaby, reminding us that some stories are best told through the senses, through the feel of the wind and the scent of the soil. And as we wrap this gentle introduction, let your mind drift toward the next chapter, where we'll explore further aspects of this ancient world, easing into the details that await. For now, rest in the rhythm of the river and the earth, knowing that the mound builder's legacy endures in the whispers of the wind. Word count 1,500. In the heart of the ancient Mississippi Valley, where the river's gentle whisper met the vast prairie skies, Monk's Mound rose like a slumbering giant, its earthen slopes cradling the rhythms of 12th century Cahokia. Under a canopy of warm sunlight that filtered through the leaves of towering oaks, builders moved with purposeful grace, their simple tunics swaying like whispers of wind-kissed grass. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of freshly turned soil, a comforting aroma that mingled with the distant hum of cicadas, inviting one to drift into a peaceful reverie. These workers, clad in woven fabrics dyed the soft hues of river clay and summer wildflowers, toiled not in haste but with a steady, almost meditative rhythm. They carried baskets brimming with dark, loamy earth, their footsteps creating a soft crunch underfoot, like the gentle crackle of autumn leaves settling into place. Each handful of soil they piled was a brushstroke in a grand tapestry, layer upon layer building the mound's imposing form. The sunlight warmed their skin, casting long, golden shadows that danced across the ceremonial grounds. where the air felt alive with the subtle energy of creation. One could imagine the warmth seeping into their bones, a soothing balm against the day's quiet labors, as if the earth itself were breathing in harmony with their efforts. Monk's Mound, standing tall at the center of Cahokia's sprawling landscape, held a profound cultural weight, a beacon of communal unity and spiritual reverence. Excavations from later centuries reveal how this colossal structure, reaching heights of over 30 feet and spanning acres, served as a focal point for gatherings that wove the fabric of society together. In those times, the mound's broad platform atop its slopes offered a stage for rituals that celebrated the cycles of nature and the interconnectedness of all things. The builders' work was an act of devotion, their tunics brushing against the growing mound as they shaped it with tools of smoothed wood and stone, the repetitive motion evoking a lullaby of progress. The soil's cool, damp texture under their fingers provided a tactile anchor, grounding them in the moment, while the warm breeze carried hints of blooming prairie flowers, a sensory symphony that eased the mind into contemplation. This earthen edifice embodied the ingenuity of Cahokia's people, drawing from the rich reports of archaeological digs that uncovered its meticulous construction. Layers of soil, carefully compacted and reinforced, spoke of a society that valued endurance and harmony. The mound's significance lay in its role as a communal heart, where the collective effort fostered a sense of shared purpose. Imagine the scene as the sun climbed higher, its rays illuminating the workers' faces with a soft glow, the air filled with the faint rhythmic sounds of baskets being set down and earth being patted into place. Each pile of soil added not just height, but a layer of cultural legacy, a testament to the Mississippian way of life. The warmth of the sunlight filtered through, creating a gentle haze that made the world feel dreamlike, where every crunch of soil underfoot was a note in a calming melody. Yet, amidst this serene tableau, there lingers a gentle mystery, one that invites quiet reflection rather than bold inquiry. What precise purposes did Monk's Mound serve in the daily and ceremonial life of Cahokia? Excavation reports from sites like those conducted by the Cahokia Mound State Historic Site suggest it was more than mere elevation. It may have hosted elite residences, temples, or observatories aligned with celestial events. The builders, with their tunics fluttering in the light breeze, might have envisioned it as a bridge between the earthly and the divine, a place where the warm sunlight kissed the soil to reveal hidden meanings. The mystery deepens with the sensory details unearthed, the cool, grainy feel of the earth as it was layered, the faint mineral tang in the air, and the way the mound's curves caught the wind, whispering secrets that time has yet to fully unravel. It was a structure that stood as a symbol of aspiration, its slopes rising like a sigh toward the sky, inviting wonder without demanding answers. In this calming rhythm of creation, the mound's cultural role unfolded like a story told in whispers. It represented the pinnacle of communal achievement, where the act of piling earth was an expression of unity, much like the way sunlight dapples through leaves to create patterns of light and shadow. Archaeological evidence, drawn from careful digs around the base, indicates that such mounds were integral to social organization, fostering gatherings that reinforced bonds through shared rituals. The workers' tunics, simple and unadorned, moved in unison, their movements as fluid as the river's flow, each step accompanied by the soft, satisfying crunch of soil compacting beneath their feet. The warmth enveloped everything, a gentle embrace that made the labor feel almost meditative, with the air carrying the subtle scent of damp earth and distant wild herbs. As the day progressed, the mound grew, its form emerging with a grace that belied the effort involved. The sensory world around it added layers of tranquility, the warm sunlight casting a golden veil over the scene, the cool breeze rustling through the grasses at the mound's edges, and the earthy crunch that echoed like a heartbeat. This was no ordinary hill. It was a canvas for cultural expression, where the people of Cahokia inscribed their values into the landscape. Reports from excavations highlight the precision of its construction, with distinct layers of different soils suggesting intentional design, perhaps for stability or symbolic representation. The mystery of its full purposes adds a subtle wit to the narrative, like a riddle posed by the wind. Was it a platform for leaders to address the masses, a site for astronomical observations, or something more ethereal, lost to the mists of time? One can picture the builders pausing for a moment, their tunics damp with the day's warmth, feeling the sun's rays on their skin as they surveyed their work. The air, filled with the faint aroma of the prairie, carried a sense of accomplishment. The soil's texture under their hands a reminder of the earth's generosity. In this way, Monk's Mound became an enduring symbol of cultural cohesion. Its slopes, a gentle incline toward understanding. The mystery persists, a soft enigma that invites the imagination to wander, much like the way the sunlight plays across the landscape, revealing glimpses but never the whole picture. Through the lens of historical accuracy, as gleaned from Cahokia's excavation records, the mound's significance extends to its role in sustaining a complex society. It was a place where the community's collective spirit was elevated, literally and figuratively, with each basket of soil contributing to a larger harmony. The warm sunlight, filtering down, created a soothing glow that made the scene feel timeless, the crunch of earth a comforting constant. Subtle wit emerges in the thought that such a massive structure could hold secrets as elusive as shadows at dusk, purposes that archaeology teases out but never fully captures. As the workers continued their task, the mound's presence grew more imposing, its cultural importance etched into every layer. The sensory details abound, the warmth of the sun on exposed skin, the cool, gritty feel of soil sifting through fingers, and the gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming flowers from the nearby fields. This was a monument to peace and prosperity, a calming force in the landscape, where the mystery of its lost purposes added a layer of intrigue without disturbance. In closing, as the sun began its slow descent, casting longer shadows over Monk's Mound, one might feel a gentle pull toward the next chapter of Cahokia's story, where the echoes of this earthen giant continue to whisper through time. In the soft glow of a 12th century summer dawn, the ancient villages of Cahokia stirred gently, like leaves rustling in the breath of the great river nearby. Mist clung to the earth, wrapping the thatched roofs and earthen paths in a veil of quiet mystery, where skilled hands shaped the world from clay and stone. Far from the clamor of daily toil, artisans moved with a rhythmic grace, their tunics of woven fibers swaying like whispers in the wind, as they coaxed life into vessels that would hold the stories of a vanishing era. These builders, sturdy and deliberate, gathered in clusters around open-air workshops, their fingers tracing patterns on wet clay that gleamed under the rising sun. Imagine the faint clinking of tools against the cool, pliable earth, a sound like distant raindrops on broad leaves, echoing through the air with a soothing cadence. Each piece began as a simple lump, pulled from the riverbanks where the soil held secrets of floods long past. A woman in her tunic, its edges frayed from years of labor, would sit cross-legged, her hands moving in slow circles, the clay yielding under her touch like a dream taking form. The air carried the earthy scent of damp soil mixed with the faint smoky tang from nearby kilns, where fires burned low and steady, their flames flickering like fireflies in the dusk. In those moments, the artisans crafted not mere objects, but extensions of their world. a world of the Mississippian people, where every artifact wove into the fabric of community and ritual. Pottery bowls, etched with intricate spirals and geometric designs, emerged from the kilns with a subtle glow, their surfaces smooth as river stones worn by time. These vessels served humble yet profound purposes, some for storing grains harvested from fertile fields, their rims wide to catch the golden kernels that rustled like soft laughter in the breeze. Others held water drawn from the Mississippi, cool and clear, its surface rippling memories of journeys downstream. And then there were the finer pieces, adorned with shells or bits of polished stone, perhaps meant for ceremonies under the stars, where the night sky's vastness inspired quiet wonder. Yet amid this peaceful rhythm, a mystery lingered, as elusive as smoke from the kilns curling into the sky. Archaeological reports from sites like those excavated in the 20th century whisper of artifacts that vanished without trace, leaving gaps in the story like missing notes in a lullaby. Why, for instance, have so few of these carefully crafted pots and tools survived the centuries? One might ponder, with a touch of wry amusement, how the river itself could play tricks, sweeping away treasures in its lazy currents, as if nature were a forgetful guardian hoarding secrets for its own delight. The Mississippian builders, drawing from traditions honed over generations, fashioned these items with materials sourced from the surrounding lands, clays rich in minerals, fired in pits lined with stones that retained heat like warm embraces. But time, that gentle thief, has claimed many, eroded by soil and water, or perhaps repurposed in ways lost to memory. Consider the sensory tapestry of their work, the warm press of clay against skin, slick and yielding, as hands shaped rims that curved like the horizon at dusk. The kilns, built from stacked stones and covered with earth, emitted a low, comforting hum as air fed the flames, the smoke carrying hints of charred wood and baked earth into the village air. It was a process both mundane and magical, where the crackle of firing clay sounded like distant thunder rolling over the plains, a reminder of the world's vast, indifferent beauty. These artifacts, once complete, held not just practical utility, but a deeper essence, perhaps symbols of trade networks that stretched like invisible threads across the landscape, connecting Cahokia to distant communities. Historians and archaeologists, piecing together fragments from reports like those of the Cahokia Mound's state historic site excavations, suggest that many items were intentionally buried or hidden, their purposes shrouded in ritual. A bowl might have been placed in a cache, its interior etched with patterns evoking the cycles of the moon, to ensure bountiful harvests or safe passages for the spirits of the departed. Yet the unknowns persist. Why were certain designs repeated, like the swirling motifs that mimic the river's eddies, and what happened to the myriad pieces that never reached modern eyes? One could imagine, with a subtle smile, that these lost artifacts chose their own fate, dissolving into the earth as if to say, "Our stories are not for you to hold." As the day waned, the artisans would pause, their tunics dusted with fine clay particles that glittered in the fading light, like stars emerging one by one. The village settled into a hush, the clinking of tools giving way to the soft rustle of wind through the grasses, carrying the faint, lingering scent of smoke. In these quiet hours, one might reflect on the wit of history itself, how it teases with what it reveals and conceals, much like a river that reveals its bed only to hide it again with the next flood. The purposes of these artifacts, from everyday utility to enigmatic ritual, speak of a society attuned to the rhythms of nature. Yet the mystery of their loss adds a layer of intrigue, a puzzle that invites contemplation rather than urgency. Deeper into the evening, under a canopy of stars that twinkled with serene indifference, The builders might share tales around low fires, their voices a gentle murmur against the night. What became of the great shell gorgets, one might muse, carved with images of birds and serpents, meant to adorn the shoulders of leaders? Archaeological evidence from sites such as those near the American Bottom region points to such items as markers of status, their surfaces polished to a subtle sheen that caught the firelight like captured sunlight. But many have vanished, perhaps carried away by traders or lost to the elements, leaving only impressions in the soil for modern seekers to decipher. The sensory details endure in imagination. The cool weight of a stone axe in hand, its edge honed to a fine point that whispered against wood, or the faint mineral tang of pigments ground for decoration, mixing with the earthy aroma of the workshop. This mystery, woven into the very fabric of Cahokia's legacy, invites a calming curiosity, a soft inquiry into the impermanence of all things. Why do some artifacts persist, preserved in the silent embrace of the earth, while others fade like echoes? Reports from excavations, such as those conducted by the Illinois State Archaeological Survey, reveal patterns, caches of pottery and tools buried with care, suggesting deliberate offerings or storage for future use. Yet the gaps in the record spark wonder: did floods or fires claim them? Or were they dismantled in times of change, their materials recycled into new creations? One might chuckle inwardly at the thought. Even in loss, these items continue their cycle, as if the artisans themselves anticipated the dance of creation and dissolution. As the night deepened, the village breathed in unison with the wind, the smoky kilns now cool and still. The mystery of the lost Cahokia artifacts, with their untold stories and vanished forms, lingers like a half-remembered dream, a testament to a world where every crafted piece held a spark of the eternal. In this gentle unraveling, we find not despair, but a soothing reminder of continuity, where the clink of clay against stone echoes faintly through time, inviting us to listen closely. And as this tale draws to a close, one can't help but wonder what other secrets the dawn might reveal, drawing us onward to the next whisper of history. Word count 1502. In the heart of ancient Cahokia, where the great river's whispers met the earth's steady breath, there stood a chief's lodge, a haven of woven shadows and enduring wood. It was the 12th century, a time when the world turned slowly under the gaze of stars that seemed to linger just a little longer. Imagine, if you will, stepping into this realm not as an intruder, but as a quiet observer, drawn by the faint glow of fires that danced like fireflies in the dusk. The air carried the warm, earthy scent of maize roasting over coals, mingling with the subtle spice of wild herbs, inviting one to pause and breathe deeply, as if the night itself were a gentle lullaby. The lodge rose tall among the lesser dwellings, its walls crafted from stout timbers hewn from the surrounding forests, smoothed by hands that knew the rhythm of the river's flow. Inside, the space unfolded like a dream half-remembered, with beams arching overhead like the branches of ancient oaks, their surfaces etched with faint carvings of serpents and birds, symbols of power passed down through generations. Here, the Mississippian chiefs gathered, draped in cloaks of iridescent feathers, each plume a trophy from distant hunts or traded treasures. The feathers shimmered in the firelight, a cascade of blues and greens that caught the eye like sunlight on water, whispering of journeys across vast plains and skies. These leaders, with their poised demeanor and subtle smiles, moved with the grace of those who commanded not through force, but through the quiet authority of tradition. At the center of the hall, a great fire pit flickered, its flames casting a soft golden hue across the room, painting the wooden walls with shadows that swayed like silent dancers. The warmth enveloped everything. a gentle embrace that chased away the chill of the autumn evenings when the wind carried hints of the coming winter. Around the fire, low benches and mats of woven reeds invited the chiefs and their honored guests to recline, their voices a murmur like the rustle of leaves in a breeze. One might hear the soft clink of shell beads against polished stone bowls, or the occasional laugh, light and fleeting, as if sharing a secret known only to the wise. Dining in this wooden hall was an affair of quiet opulence, where every meal unfolded like a story told in whispers. The chiefs, resplendent in their feathered cloaks, partook of feasts that spoke of abundance and care. Maize, that golden staple of the land, filled the air with its sweet, nutty aroma as it was ground into meal and shaped into flat cakes, grilled over the embers until they turned a deep, inviting brown. Accompanying this were stews of river fish, their flesh tender and flavored with wild onions and berries, the juices simmering in clay pots that had been fired in kilns not far from the lodge. The taste was rich and satisfying, a blend of earth and water that lingered on the tongue, reminding one of the fertile fields that stretched beyond the settlement. Freshwater mussels, gathered from the river's edge, added a subtle brininess, their shells cracked open to reveal pearls of flavor that the chiefs savored with deliberate slowness, as if each bite were a meditation. The opulence extended beyond the food, weaving through the very fabric of the lodge. Adornments of copper and mica caught the fire's glow, their surfaces polished to a mirror-like sheen, reflecting the faces of those gathered. Beaded necklaces, crafted from the shells of distant seas, draped over the chief's shoulders, their colors a tapestry of reds and whites that spoke of alliances forged through trade. The air was alive with the scent of smoldering cedar used to purify the space and ward off the night's uncertainties, its woody fragrance mingling with the maize to create a cocoon of comfort. One could almost feel the weight of history in the air, as if the lodge itself held memories of ceremonies long past, where songs drifted like smoke toward the thatched roof. Yet, amid this serenity, there lingered a mystery, subtle and unspoken, like a shadow that flits just out of sight. The lost treasures of the lodge, those enigmatic artifacts that once graced these halls, have puzzled scholars for centuries. Excavations at Cahokia have uncovered fragments of exquisite pottery, perhaps once used in feasts, their designs swirling with motifs of mythical creatures, or caches of finely wrought tools that vanished without trace. One might imagine, in the quiet hours after the evening meal, when the fires burned low and the chiefs retired to their private alcoves, that these treasures were spirited away by design, hidden in earthworks, or carried off by the river's flow. Were they offerings to unseen forces, or safeguards against the uncertainties of a changing world? The mystery endures, a gentle enigma that adds a layer of wonder to the night, much like the way a storyteller pauses before revealing the heart of a tale. As the evening deepened, the chiefs would share tales of their ancestors, their words flowing like the river outside, carrying echoes of prosperity and resilience. A chief, his feathered cloak draped elegantly over his shoulders, might gesture toward the fire, his voice a soothing cadence that wove through the hall. "In the days of our fathers," he might say with a hint of wit, "the maize grew tall as warriors, and the feathers we wear were gifts from the sky itself." The listeners, warmed by the fire and the meal, would nod, their eyes reflecting the flames, as if the stories themselves were part of the lodge's living breath. The sensory tapestry continued, the crackle of wood, the faint tang of smoke on the air, the soft touch of reed mats beneath weary feet, all blending into a rhythm that lulled the mind toward peace. This life in the chief's lodge was one of measured grandeur, far removed from the labors of the fields or the construction of grand earthworks. Here, the focus was on the art of living well, on the subtle interplay of light and shadow, scent and sound. The chiefs, with their feathered regalia, embodied a lineage of leadership that drew from the land's abundance, their dining halls a testament to the culture's ingenuity. Yet, even in this opulence, there was a humility, a recognition that all things, feathers, maize, and treasures alike were threads in a larger weave. Historical accounts from Cahokia's excavations, such as those by the Cahokia Mound's State Historic Site, reveal a society where elite residences like this lodge featured specialized artifacts, indicating a level of social complexity. For instance, the presence of exotic materials like marine shell and copper suggests extensive trade networks, bringing goods from as far as the Gulf Coast or the Great Lakes. These findings paint a picture of a community that valued not just survival, but the cultivation of beauty and mystery. One such example is the discovery of ceremonial objects, perhaps once displayed in the lodge, their purposes now lost to time, adding to the allure of the unseen. As the night wore on, the fire's embers glowed softer, their light a gentle fade into darkness. The aroma of maize lingered, a comforting remnant of the feast, while the feathers on the chief's cloaks settled into stillness. In this moment, one could feel the passage of time, the lodge standing as a bridge between the known and the forgotten. And as sleep beckoned, like a whisper carried on the wind, thoughts might turn to what lay beyond, to the mysteries yet to unfold, and the stories that await in the dawn's first light. Yet, as the embers dim and the night's quiet deepens, one cannot help but wonder what secrets the morrow might reveal, drawing us gently toward the next chapter of this ancient tale. In the soft haze of a 12th century dawn over Cahokia, the great city stirred like a dream half remembered. Along the fertile banks of the Mississippi, where the river's gentle murmur blended with the first calls of meadowlarks, the mound builders rose from their thatched homes. These were not hurried souls, but people of rhythm and repetition, their days woven into the vast tapestry of earth and sky. Imagine them now, in simple tunics of woven fibers, their bodies attuned to the pulse of the seasons, as they stepped out into the dew-kissed fields. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of damp soil and blooming prairie flowers, a whisper that promised another day of quiet labor under the vast, unblinking sun. As the first light filtered through the canopy of ancient oaks, the builders gathered in small clusters, their movements deliberate and unhurried. A young man, his tunic frayed at the edges from years of wear, reached for a sturdy basket woven from river reeds. The material felt cool and slightly rough against his calloused palms, a familiar comfort that spoke of countless mornings like this one. Nearby, women with baskets slung over their shoulders exchanged soft words, their voices low and melodic, like the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. They moved toward the open fields where the mounds waited, half-formed giants rising from the plain. The ground crunched softly underfoot, a subtle symphony of compacted dirt and stray pebbles, each step a reminder of the earth's enduring patience. By mid-morning the work began in earnest, yet even here, amid the toil, there was a soothing cadence. The builders, men and women alike, formed lines across the fields, their tunics clinging lightly to sweaty brows as they hauled baskets of rich, dark earth. The soil, freshly dug from nearby pits, had a weight that settled into their muscles like an old friend, heavy but not burdensome. One could almost hear the faint, rhythmic thud of baskets being filled, the sound mingling with the distant hum of insects, and the occasional call of a red-tailed hawk circling overhead. Sweat beaded on their skin, tracing cool paths down their necks and backs, a tactile reminder of the day's warmth. The air grew thick with the scent of turned earth, that deep, loamy aroma that evoked the quiet mystery of growth and renewal, as if the ground itself were breathing secrets into the wind. In these moments, the builders paused occasionally, not out of exhaustion, but to adjust their loads or share a brief, knowing glance. A child, perhaps too young for heavy labor, might trail behind with a smaller basket, mimicking the adults with a playful gravity that brought a subtle wit to the scene. After all, even the earth seemed to chuckle at such earnest imitation. They worked in the shadow of the great mounds, those earthen cathedrals that had taken generations to shape, their surfaces smooth and inviting under the sun's gentle gaze. Hauling the earth was no frantic race. It was a dance of sorts, each step forward a verse in an unspoken song. The builders' tunics, dyed in earthy tones of ochre and green from local plants, fluttered slightly in the breeze, adding a whisper of color to the vast green expanse. As the sun climbed higher, casting a golden filter over the fields, the sensory details of the routine deepened. The crunch of dirt under bare feet grew more pronounced, a soft, granular texture that shifted with every placement of a basket. One builder might wipe his brow, feeling the cool evaporation of sweat against his skin, while another savored the faint metallic tang of the air, heavy with the promise of rain. These were people who knew the land's rhythms intimately, their days dictated not by written scrolls, for none existed in this world of oral traditions, but by the subtle cues of nature, the lengthening shadows, the shifting winds, the way the river's flow quickened after a storm. Yet in this very regularity lay a quiet mystery, one that lingers even now in the archaeological whispers of Cahokia. How did they measure their hours without the marks of time we take for granted? The unrecorded schedules of these builders remain an enigma, pieced together from the faint traces left in the soil patterns of wear on tools, alignments of hearths, the layered strata of the mounds themselves. It is a puzzle that invites contemplation, a gentle riddle wrapped in the earth's embrace, where each excavated artifact hints at a day structured by instinct and community, not ink and parchment. By midday, the pace eased into a natural lull, as if the sun itself suggested a respite. The builders settled in shaded spots near the fields, where the grass felt cool and yielding beneath them. They shared simple meals of roasted maize and wild berries, the flavors earthy and satisfying, with the sweet juiciness of the fruit contrasting the meal's hearty warmth. The sound of low conversation drifted like a lazy stream. Words exchanged about the progress of the mounds or the behavior of the river. One might lean back against a tree, feeling the rough bark press gently into their back, and close their eyes to the dappled light filtering through the leaves. Here, in these pauses, the subtle wit of their lives emerged. A builder might jest softly about how the earth always seemed to have more to give, as if it were playing an endless game of hide and seek with their efforts. The air carried the faint, comforting scent of smoke from distant hearths, a reminder that beyond the fields, the city pulsed with its own quiet life. Afternoons brought a return to the rhythm, with baskets once more filled and carried. The earth they hauled was not just dirt. It was the very foundation of their world, each load contributing to the monumental structures that defined Cahokia. Archaeological records from sites like Monk's Mound reveal the precision of their work, with layers of soil carefully placed and compacted, suggesting a knowledge passed down through generations. The builders' tunics, now damp with perspiration, stuck lightly to their forms, and the sensory experience intensified the gritty feel of soil grains between fingers, the warm press of the sun on exposed skin, the distant chorus of frogs from the riverbanks. One could imagine the satisfaction in their movements, a soothing fulfillment that came from shaping the land, much like a lullaby shapes the night. As the day waned, the builders slowed their pace, their bodies attuned to the lengthening shadows. The fields grew quieter, the crunch of dirt fading into the background hum of evening. They returned to their homes, baskets empty but spirits steady, the mystery of their unrecorded schedules lingering like a soft fog. How did they decide when to stop? When the light grew too dim or the air too cool? It was a question that archaeology can only hint at, through the alignment of posts and the patterns of settlement, leaving room for wonder in the spaces between. Perhaps it was the stars that guided them, or the instinctive pull of community gatherings, where stories were shared around fires that crackled with the same earthy scent as the fields. In the twilight, as the first stars emerged, the builders settled into the close of their day, a time for reflection and rest. The air cooled, carrying the faint whisper of the river and the rustle of wind through the grasses, a natural symphony that lulled the mind. Yet, even here, the enigma persisted, a subtle wit in the way their lives unfolded, without the need for clocks or calendars, relying instead on the earth's own timeless flow. And as night fully embraced Cahokia, one might ponder how these routines, so vividly etched in the soil we study today, transition seamlessly into the broader tapestry of their world, where each day's end whispers of mysteries yet to unfold. In the heart of the Mississippi Valley, where the river's gentle murmur threaded through ancient fields, the builders of Cahokia gathered as the sun climbed high in the 12th century sky. These men and women, clad in simple tunics of woven fibers that brushed against their skin like whispers of wind, turned their hands to the earth's quiet transformation. No grand ceremonies marked their work. It was a patient rhythm, a lullaby of labor that shaped the great mounds rising from the fertile soil. Here, amid the swaying grasses and the distant calls of birds, they layered the earth with care, their movements as steady as the river's flow. The builders began each day with baskets slung over their shoulders, crafted from supple willow branches that creaked softly under the weight of damp soil. These tools, honed from the surrounding woods, fit naturally into their palms, their edges worn smooth by generations of use. As they moved across the open fields, the earth shifted beneath their feet, a cool, gritty embrace that yielded willingly to their touch. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of freshly turned soil, mingling with the warmth of the sun on their skin, a soothing balm against the quiet toil. One might imagine the soil itself sighing as it was lifted, particle by particle, into the waiting baskets, each scoop a deliberate act in a dance as old as the hills. They worked in pairs or small groups, their tunics dyed in earthy tones of ochre and green, fluttering lightly in the breeze, a subtle wit in their design that seemed to mock the heaviness of their task. See how the earth plays along, one might have thought, as the soil slid effortlessly into place, forming layers like the pages of an unwritten story. The technique was simple yet profound. They compacted each layer with wooden tampers, tools carved from sturdy hickory that thudded rhythmically against the ground. This sound, a soft, repetitive pulse like a distant heartbeat, echoed across the fields, blending with the rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of crickets awakening too early. The builders pressed down with even pressure, ensuring the mound grew strong and stable, layer upon layer building toward the sky. Archaeological whispers from Cahokia reveal the mastery of these methods, drawn from sites like Monk's Mound, where evidence of such layering has endured for centuries. The soil they used was not random. It came from nearby borrow pits, selected for its mix of clay and silt that held together like a trusted companion. As they layered it, the builders might have felt the subtle warmth radiating from the compacted earth, a gentle reminder of the sun's earlier kiss. The process demanded patience, a calming cadence that allowed the mind to wander while the hands worked. One could almost hear the earth settling, a faint crackle, as air pockets collapsed, creating a foundation as enduring as the stars above. Yet, amid this serene rhythm, there lingered a mystery, a soft enigma wrapped in the folds of time. How did these builders, without the scratch of quill or the mark of stone tablets, pass down their knowledge so precisely? No records survive from that era, no etched instructions to unravel the secrets of their craft. It is as if the earth itself guarded the methods, whispering them only to those who labored upon it. Perhaps the tunics they wore held hidden patterns, subtle weaves that encoded the techniques, or maybe the tools bore notches that spoke in a language lost to us. This unrecorded wisdom, hinted at by the archaeological digs at Cahokia, where post holes and soil strata tell tales of ramps and scaffolding, adds a layer of intrigue, like a lullaby with verses that fade just out of reach. As the day progressed, the builders paused occasionally, not in exhaustion but in quiet observation, their tunics damp with the mist that rose from the fields. The shifting earth under their feet released a fresh, loamy aroma, evoking the scent of rain-soaked leaves after a summer storm. They might have shared a knowing glance, a subtle wit in their silence, as if the soil were an old friend with its own sly humor. "Look how it molds to our will," one could imagine them thinking, as the mound took shape, its slopes gentle and inviting, a testament to their unspoken artistry. Historical evidence from Cahokia's excavations paints a picture of innovation born from necessity. The builders employed ramps of packed earth and timber frames to haul heavier loads, their wooden tools, perhaps adzes and hoes carved with practical elegance, gliding through the soil like a bird through air. Each layer was not merely piled but artfully arranged, with finer soils on top to prevent erosion, a technique that archaeologists have pieced together from the mound's core samples. The sensory details linger in the mind, the cool slip of clay between fingers, the faint grit that lingered on the skin long after the work was done, the way the sun's rays danced across the growing structure, casting long, soothing shadows. In these moments, the mystery deepened, a calming puzzle that invited contemplation rather than urgency. Why were these methods never inscribed, never shared beyond the circle of those who wielded the tools? Perhaps it was a deliberate choice, a way to keep the earth's secrets sacred, passed through gestures and shared breaths rather than words. The builders' tunics, simple and unadorned, might have symbolized this, coverings that hid the profound knowledge within, much like the mounds themselves concealed their internal architecture. Archaeological finds, such as the patterned soil deposits at Cahokia, suggest a level of precision that rivals modern engineering. Yet without blueprints or plans, it remains an enigma, a soft whisper in the wind. As the sun arced toward the horizon, the builders continued their work, the wooden tools now warm from hours of use, their surfaces polished to a subtle sheen. The earth beneath them felt alive, pulsating with the memory of each layer placed, each compaction that ensured stability. One could sense the subtle shift in the air, the cooling breeze that carried the scent of wildflowers blooming nearby, a natural symphony accompanying their efforts. The tunics, now dusted with soil, seemed to blend seamlessly with the landscape, as if the builders were extensions of the earth itself. Through it all, the mystery of their unrecorded techniques wove a thread of wonder, a gentle enigma that softened the edges of history. It was not a grim puzzle, but one that invited peaceful reflection, much like watching the river flow without question. Archaeological insights from Cahokia, including the discovery of tool fragments and soil analysis, offer glimpses but no full revelation, leaving space for the imagination to wander. Perhaps the builders knew that some knowledge was best left to the earth, to be felt rather than told. As the final layers settled into place, the fields grew quiet, the day's work a lullaby fading into evening. The builders stepped back, their tunics swaying in the twilight, and one might wonder what stories the next dawn would bring. Yet for now, the mounds stood as silent guardians, bridging the past and the unseen paths ahead. In the soft glow of a 12th century Cahokia evening, where the great Mississippi River whispered secrets to the surrounding plains, a group of Mississippian mound builders gathered in their modest camps. These artisans, clad in simple tunics woven from plant fibers and dyed with earthy hues, paused from their labors to tend to the tools that shaped their world. The air carried a gentle hush, broken only by the rhythmic scrape of stone against stone, a sound as old as the river itself. Here, amid the scattered hearths and lean towers framed by bending poles, they performed the quiet ritual of maintenance, their movements deliberate and serene, like the steady flow of water over smooth pebbles. The builders, strong yet unassuming figures with calloused hands and faces marked by the sun's kind embrace, sat cross-legged on woven mats. Their tunics, loose and comfortable, fell to their knees, the fabric whispering against their skin as they worked. Each man and woman held a stone tool, a chisel-edged hoe, or a finely flaked axe, crafted from the flint and chert quarried from distant hills, materials that archaeologists later uncovered in sites like those at Cahokia. With practiced ease, they selected grinding stones, worn smooth from generations of use, and began the meticulous process of sharpening. The grinding stone, cool and heavy in their palms, met the tool's edge with a soft, consistent grind, producing a sound like distant rain on leaves, soothing and persistent. Dust rose gently into the air, a fine mist of particles that caught the fading light, turning the camp into a haze of gold and gray. It settled on their tunics, leaving a faint, chalky residue that spoke of Earth's ancient patience. The builders breathed it in without complaint, the scent a mix of dry earth and the faint metallic tang of worked stone, a reminder of the materials that connected them to the land. One builder, his tunic sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms etched with faint scars from past efforts, paused to inspect his axe. He ran a thumb along the edge, feeling for imperfections, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. Even the river smooths its banks over time, he might have murmured, with a subtle wit, his words carrying the lullaby-like rhythm of shared wisdom. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the camp, the builders continued their work with a rhythm that mimicked the heartbeat of the world around them. They used water from nearby streams drawn in simple clay pots to dampen the grinding stones, creating a slurry that aided the sharpening process. The water glistened on the tools, beads forming and trickling down like morning dew, cooling the stone and preventing it from fracturing under pressure. Archaeological evidence from Cahokia's artifact caches reveals how these tools were not merely functional, but refined, with edges honed to a precision that hints at lost techniques. The builders applied a gentle pressure, their hands moving in slow, circular motions, the friction generating a warmth that spread through their fingers, a comforting sensation amid the cooling evening air. One could imagine the scene unfolding with the subtlety of a dream, the builder's breath steady and deep, inhaling the crisp scent of the surrounding grasslands mixed with the woody aroma of nearby fires. The fires, low and flickering, cast a warm light that danced across their tunics, highlighting the intricate patterns woven into the fabric, simple motifs inspired by the river's curves and the mound's majestic forms. Yet, in this moment, their focus remained on the tools, each stroke of the grinding stone a testament to their resourcefulness. Historical finds, such as those from the Cahokia Mound's State Historic Site, show that these implements were often bifacial, with both sides flaked and polished, requiring careful maintenance to retain their effectiveness. As the evening deepened, the mystery of these tools began to weave through the air like the dust itself. Whispers of forgotten designs lingered in the builders' minds, a subtle enigma that archaeologists ponder even today. How had their ancestors crafted edges so sharp, so enduring, that no modern replica quite captures the same balance? Perhaps it was in the selection of the stone, sourced from specific quarries whose locations faded with time, or in a technique of heat treatment that altered the flint's structure, making it harder and more resilient. The builders worked with an intuitive knowledge, passed down through oral traditions, yet some aspects remained elusive, like shadows slipping away at dawn. This mystery, distinct from the grand constructions or everyday chores, added a layer of gentle intrigue to their routine, a wit in the universe's design that kept the past just out of reach. The sound of grinding persisted, a lullaby that soothed the camp, each scrape blending into the next like waves lapping at the shore. One builder, her tunic adorned with a simple cord belt, selected a finer abrasive stone for the final polish, her movements graceful and unhurried. The stone's surface, pitted from use, created a finer dust that sparkled briefly in the firelight before settling. She hummed a soft tune under her breath, a melody as ancient as the tools, its notes carrying a calming cadence that eased the day's fatigue. Sensory memories flooded the scene, the cool touch of the water-slicked tool, the earthy taste of dust on the tongue, the visual symphony of flames flickering against the darkening sky. In the broader context of Mississippian society, as evidenced by artifacts from sites like Spiro or Moundville, these maintenance practices were essential for sustaining the community's efforts. The builders knew that a well-sharpened tool could mean the difference between efficiency and waste, yet they approached the task with a detached serenity, as if the tools held stories of their own. One might picture a builder pausing to admire the edge's gleam, reflecting the fire's light like a river at sunset, and offering a wry smile at the tool's stubborn resilience. "It outlasts us all," he could say, his voice laced with that subtle wit, acknowledging the impermanence of human endeavor. As the stars began to emerge, punctuating the night with their soft luminescence, the builders set aside their newly sharpened tools, wrapping them in hides for protection. The air grew cooler, carrying a faint breeze that rustled the tunics and carried away the last traces of dust. Yet, the mystery persisted, a gentle undercurrent to their work. Why had certain designs vanished, leaving only fragments for future generations to puzzle over? Perhaps it was the migration of peoples, or the shift in resources, or maybe a deliberate choice to let some secrets fade, preserving the sacredness of their craft. This enigma, drawn from archaeological insights into the variability of Mississippian tools, added a poetic depth to the evening, inviting contemplation without urgency. The camp settled into a peaceful hush, the builders stretching their limbs and sharing quiet words, their tunics now dusted with the day's labors. The grinding stones rested nearby, ready for another cycle, their surfaces worn but enduring. In this moment, the world felt balanced, a harmonious blend of human ingenuity and natural rhythm. And as the night deepened, one might sense a transition approaching, a subtle shift toward new tales of the Mississippian world, where the river's whisper continued to flow into uncharted stories. In the heart of the vast Mississippi plain, where the great river's whispers mingled with the rustle of tall grasses, the builders of Cahokia gathered as twilight softened the edges of the world. It was the 12th century, a time when earthen mounds rose like ancient sentinels under the patient hands of a people who shaped the land with reverence and rhythm. Among them, the mound builders' sturdy figures draped in simple tunics of woven fibers, dyed in earthy tones of ochre and green, found solace in the quiet rituals of shared meals within their clustered villages. These moments, woven into the fabric of daily life, yet distinct from the grind of labor or the grandeur of leadership, fostered bonds that hummed like a distant melody, invisible yet enduring. The air carried a gentle warmth as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the thatched roofs and open hearths. The builders, their hands calloused from shaping clay and hauling earth, settled around low fires where maize kernels sizzled softly in clay pots, releasing a sweet, smoky aroma that drifted like a lazy river current. Each ear of corn, harvested from the fertile fields beyond the village, crackled as it heated, its golden kernels popping with a faint, rhythmic whisper that evoked the earth's quiet generosity. Women and men alike, their tunics loose and comfortable against the cooling evening breeze, leaned in to stir the pots with wooden spoons, the wood gliding smoothly through the thickening stew. The scent of wild herbs, crushed sage, and pungent ramps mingled with the maize, creating a fragrance that wrapped around the group like a soft blanket, inviting weary bodies to relax and hearts to open. In these gatherings, conversation flowed as gently as the nearby creek, a soft chatter that rose and fell like the breath of the wind through the leaves. One builder, his tunic frayed at the edges from days of labor, might recount a tale of a particularly stubborn mound that yielded only after collective effort, his voice laced with a subtle wit that turned hardship into a shared chuckle. "Ah, that earth," he might say, his words tumbling out with a wry smile. "It fights back like a river otter, but in the end, we all find our place." Others nodded, their eyes crinkling in amusement as they passed around baskets of roasted nuts and dried berries, the textures varying from the smooth, oily surface of hickory nuts to the tart, chewy bite of elderberries. These exchanges, simple yet profound, knit the community together, forging ties that went beyond kinship or necessity. The builders came from diverse clans, their tunics marked by subtle patterns that spoke of ancestral lineages, stripes for the river folk, dots for those from the upland forests. Yet here, in the glow of the fire, differences faded, like stars at dawn. A young woman, her tunic adorned with beads from traded shells, might offer a portion of her meal to an elder, her gesture accompanied by a quiet word of gratitude, the steam from the hot maize rising between them like a veil of shared history. The elder, in turn, would respond with a story of seasons past, his voice a soothing murmur that carried the weight of unwritten memories. These interactions, built on mutual respect and unspoken understanding, formed the invisible threads of community bonds, stronger than the cords that bound their thatched homes. As the meal progressed, the sensory tapestry deepened. The fire's embers glowed with a hypnotic orange hue, casting flickering light that danced across faces lined with the day's toil. One could almost taste the earthiness of the stew, a blend of ground roots and foraged greens that evoked the fertile soil they tilled. The soft crunch of fresh cornbread, baked in clay ovens and still warm to the touch, added a comforting contrast to the meal's smoother elements, its subtle sweetness lingering on the tongue like a gentle promise. All around, the village hummed with life, the distant call of a nightjar echoing through the trees, the faint rustle of leaves underfoot as children, not yet builders themselves, played at the edges of the gathering. Yet even in these playful sounds, there was a calming rhythm, a lullaby of community that soothed the soul. Historical records from Mississippian society, gleaned from the remnants of their world artifacts like ceramic vessels and polished stones, reveal how such bonds were central to survival and spirit. In Cahokia, with its grand mounds serving as testaments to collective endeavor, The builders' gatherings mirrored broader social structures where reciprocity and alliance were paramount. Unlike the hierarchical displays in elite spaces, these village meals emphasized equality, drawing from traditions where food sharing symbolized enduring connections. Ethno-historical accounts, such as those inferred from later southeastern tribes, suggest that these practices fostered resilience, allowing communities to weather challenges like unpredictable floods or scarce harvests. One might imagine, for instance, how a builder from a distant kin group, his tunic bearing unfamiliar motifs, was welcomed not through formal decree, but through the simple act of sharing a warmed gourd of water, its cool, mineral taste, a quiet affirmation of hospitality. Yet amid this warmth lay a mystery, one that lingered like mist over the river at dawn, the unwritten friendships that defined these bonds. In a world without scrolls or inscriptions, how did such connections endure, passed down through generations like an unseen current? Archaeological evidence, from the layout of village dwellings clustered for easy interaction to the shared tools found in communal caches, hints at friendships formed not through words on stone, but through repeated acts of kindness and collaboration. A builder might forge a lasting tie with another through a shared laugh over a mishap with a heavy load, or a quiet nod during a moment of rest, these ephemeral moments etching themselves into the collective memory. This mystery, untouched by the scribes of later eras, invites a gentle wonder how friendships, as elusive as the wind, shaped the very soul of Cahokia, their essence preserved in the patterns of daily life rather than grand narratives. As the night deepened, the builders lingered, their tunics now dappled with the fire's fading light. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of dew settling on the grasses, and the chatter softened to murmurs like the last notes of a lullaby. One might hear the occasional witty aside, a builder quipping about the maize that always seemed to outsmart the fire, drawing soft laughter that echoed into the darkness. These bonds, woven from shared meals and subtle gestures, form the quiet backbone of Cahokia's society, a testament to the human spirit's capacity for connection in an unwritten world. In the distance, the great mounds stood silent, their shadows merging with the night, reminding all of the larger tapestry to which these moments belong. Yet here, in the village circle, the focus remained on the immediate, the sensory, the shared. The mystery of these friendships, ever present, added a layer of intrigue, a subtle enigma that whispered of deeper truths waiting to be uncovered. As the stars wheeled overhead, the builders rose slowly, their movements deliberate and peaceful, carrying the warmth of the evening into their rest. One could almost feel the cool earth beneath their feet as they dispersed, the soft give of the ground a reminder of the land that sustained them. Historical examples, like the evidence from sites such as Moundville or Spiro, underscore how similar communities relied on these bonds for cultural continuity, with artifacts suggesting feasts that reinforced social ties. A particularly evocative detail might be the use of shell gorgets worn on tunics during gatherings, their intricate carvings depicting intertwined figures, symbols, perhaps, of the invisible networks that held society together. The sizzling of late-night embers, the lingering taste of herbs on the palate, and the gentle brush of night air all conspired to create a scene of tranquil unity. As the last embers dimmed, thoughts turned inevitably outward, to the rhythms of the morrow and the broader world beyond. In this calm repose, the builders' bonds stood as a quiet legacy, a mystery unfolding in the heart's quiet spaces, ready to weave into the next chapter of their story. Word count, approximately 1,500. In the soft glow of a 12th century Cahokia twilight, where the great mounds rose like ancient guardians against the vast Mississippi sky, the builders gathered with quiet purpose. These artisans of earth and spirit, clad in simple tunics woven from river reed fibers, moved through the evening haze as if part of the landscape itself. The air carried a gentle whisper of wind through the tall grasses, and the distant hum of crickets wove into the rhythm of their steps. Here, in this thriving heart of the Mississippian world, rituals unfolded not as grand spectacles, but as tender exchanges between the people and the unseen forces that shaped their days. The builders, strong yet serene in their demeanor, approached the altars atop the central mounds with baskets of golden maize cradled in their arms. Their tunics, dyed in earthy hues of ochre and green from crushed roots and leaves, hung loosely, swaying with each measured breath. As they knelt, the first stars began to prick the darkening expanse, and the scent of smoky fires rose from carefully tended hearths at the altar's base. These fires, built from dried hickory and willow, crackled softly, releasing tendrils of smoke that curled upward like silent prayers. The warmth from the flames kissed the cool night air, creating a comforting embrace that enveloped the gathering, while the builder's fingers brushed against the rough texture of the maize kernels, each one a symbol of the earth's generous bounty. In these moments, the offerings commenced with a hush, the builders placing ears of maize upon flat stones that gleamed faintly in the firelight. They chanted in low, melodic tones, voices blending like the murmur of a gentle stream, invoking the spirits of growth and renewal. The chants were soft, almost lullaby-like, with words passed down through generations, their meanings layered in the mystery of unwritten traditions. One might hear the faint repetition of syllables, a rhythmic flow that evoked the cycle of seasons, planting, harvest, and rest. The air grew thick with the aroma of roasting corn from nearby pits, a subtle sweetness mingling with the earthy smoke, inviting a sense of peace that settled over the scene like a warm blanket. As the builders performed their duties, their movements were deliberate and fluid, a dance of reverence honed by centuries of practice. Historical accounts, drawn from the careful excavations of Cahokia's ritual spaces, suggest that these ceremonies were central to maintaining harmony with the natural world. The maize, selected from the year's most plentiful crops, represented not just sustenance but a bridge to the divine, offered in hopes of continued fertility for the fields and the people. One builder, perhaps an elder with lines etched deep into his face like the contours of the mounds, would lead the group, his voice a steady thread in the chant. The soft thud of his staff against the packed earth provided a gentle percussion, echoing the heartbeat of the community without delving into the ties that bound them daily, a realm left untouched here. The fires flickered higher as more offerings were made, casting elongated shadows that danced across the mound slopes. Sensory memories lingered in the air, the faint crackle of burning wood, the cool dampness of dew forming on the grass, and the subtle taste of ash on the tongue from the drifting smoke. In this calming ritual, the builders embodied a quiet wisdom, their tunics brushing against the altar stones with a whisper of fabric against stone. Historical insights from Cahokia's preserved sites, such as the remnants of ceremonial platforms, reveal that such practices were integral to the society's spiritual framework, drawing from the Mississippian emphasis on agricultural deities. Yet there was always an element of enigma, the unwritten rituals that eluded even the most diligent scholars. What precise words were whispered in those chants? How did the builders interpret the subtle shifts in the fire's flames, seeing omens in the way the smoke twisted toward the stars? As the ceremony deepened, the builders paused to observe the flame's gentle sway, their eyes reflecting the warm orange light. The mystery of these unwritten rituals lay in their oral transmission, a chain of knowledge that vanished with each passing generation, leaving only faint traces in the archaeological record. Unlike the tangible mounds that stood as testaments to their labor, the core of these practices remained elusive, a puzzle that teased the imagination. Perhaps in the soft chants, there were hidden layers of meaning, subtle invocations that spoke to the builder's innermost hopes, fears of drought gently acknowledged, not dwelled upon in a detached whisper of consequence. The air grew cooler, carrying the faint scent of night-blooming flowers from the surrounding plains, adding to the sensory tapestry that enveloped the scene. Throughout the ritual, the builders maintained a rhythm that felt eternal, their offerings a humble dialogue with the spirits. Historical examples from Cahokia's ritual contexts, such as the alignment of mounds with celestial events, underscore the precision of these practices. As the maze was arranged in patterns on the altars, perhaps a spiral mimicking the sun's path, or a simple row symbolizing the river's flow, the builder's hands moved with graceful intent. The smoke from the fires curled lazily, carrying the essence of the offering skyward, while the soft chants continued, their cadence like a soothing lullaby that eased the mind into contemplation. One could almost feel the warmth radiating from the flames, a gentle heat that countered the chill of the evening, and hear the distant call of an owl, its hoot blending seamlessly with the human voices. In these gatherings, the mystery deepened, for not all rituals were fully documented in the annals of history. The unwritten aspects invited wonder. What secret gestures accompanied the maize offerings, or how did the builders discern the spirit's responses in the wind's soft sigh? This enigma, distinct from tales of communal ties or vanished relics, added a layer of intrigue, a subtle wit in the universe's vast, unknowable design. As the fires began to dim, their embers glowing like fading stars, the builders stepped back, their tunics now dusted with ash, a mark of their devotion. The scene unfolded with a calming continuity, each element weaving into the next like threads in a finely crafted garment. Sensory details abounded. The earthy taste of the air, heavy with moisture from the nearby river, the gentle pressure of the ground beneath bare feet, firm yet yielding, and the faint, rhythmic breathing of the group, synchronized with the chants. Historical records from Cahokia's mound excavations indicate that such ceremonies occurred seasonally, perhaps during the harvest moons, reinforcing the builders' role as stewards of both land and spirit. Yet, the true essence remained veiled, a mystery that lingered like the last echoes of a song. As the night progressed, the builders concluded their offerings, the maize now resting in quiet repose on the altars. The smoky fires settled into warm coals, their light softening to a gentle glow that illuminated the path back down the mound. In this lullaby-like atmosphere, where the world seemed to pause in reverence, one couldn't help but sense the subtle wit of it all the way ancient practices endured through time, defying full understanding. And as the last chants faded into the night, the scene transitioned gently, paving the way for the next chapter in Cahokia's storied legacy, where new mysteries awaited in the dawn's first light. In the hushed glow of a 12th century Cahokia evening, where the great earthen mounds rose like gentle guardians against the horizon, the Mississippian builders moved with a quiet rhythm through their village clusters. Clad in simple tunics woven from soft fibers of milkweed and nettle, their bodies carried the day's labors as easily as the river carried silt. These artisans of earth and stone paused now to tend to the invisible threads of well-being, drawing upon ancient herbs that whispered secrets from the surrounding forests. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp soil and crushed leaves, a soothing embrace that wrapped around them like a mother's shawl, inviting rest and renewal. Imagine the builders, their tunics draped loosely over sun-warmed skin, gathering in small clearings where the village hearths flickered low. Here, under the canopy of towering hickories and oaks, they prepared infusions from the wild bergamot for its floral steam that rose in delicate spirals, or the earthy roots of ginseng, unearthed with careful hands to avoid disturbing the spirits below. These practices, born from generations of observation and trial, formed the backbone of their health rituals, a tapestry woven not with tools of stone, but with the subtle alchemy of nature. The steam from heated stones, dotted with sprigs of sage and yarrow, curled upward, carrying with it a fragrance that mingled honeyed sweetness with the tang of fresh rain, easing the aches that settled into their shoulders after days of shaping the mounds. One builder, perhaps an elder with lines etched like riverbeds on his face, would kneel by the fire, his tunic sleeves rolled to reveal forearms marked by the clay's embrace. He crushed leaves of evening primrose between his palms, releasing an oil that gleamed like starlight, and mixed it into a paste for soothing rashes born from the humid air. The process was deliberate, almost meditative, each motion a soft incantation against the uncertainties of life. As the steam enveloped them, it carried whispers of relief, the warmth seeping into tired muscles, while the earthy aroma grounded their thoughts, pulling them away from the day's exertions. There was a subtle wit in these moments, a knowing smile shared as one might say, even the mightiest mound begins with a single seed, reminding them that strength lay not just in building, but in mending. In Cahokia's thriving communities, such health practices extended beyond the individual, weaving through the fabric of village life. Women in tunics, adorned with subtle patterns of dyed fibers, would gather dew-kissed herbs at dawn, their baskets filling with the likes of black cohosh and echinacea, plants revered for their ability to balance the body's humors. These gatherings were serene affairs, the air alive with the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of songbirds, a melody that lulled the senses into a state of peaceful awareness. The builders applied these remedies with a gentle hand, perhaps wrapping a poultice of comfrey around a sprained ankle, its cool, velvety texture providing immediate comfort amidst the warm, loamy scent that evoked the forest floor after a gentle rain. Yet, amidst this harmony, there lingered a mystery that softened the edges of their knowledge, like fog rolling over the Mississippi. The lost remedy recipes, passed down through oral traditions that faded with the winds of time, held secrets to ailments long vanished from memory. Archaeologists, piecing together fragments from Mississippian sites, speak of clay pots and wooden tools unearthed at Cahokia, stained with residues of plants like jimsonweed and sassafras, hinting at remedies for fevers and pains that once flourished but now elude us. One might imagine an elder reciting verses under the stars, their words a lullaby of ingredients, perhaps a blend of willow bark for its subtle bitterness, mixed with honey from wild bees, to ease the body's fires. But the exact proportions, the whispered chants that activated their potency, slipped into the ether, leaving only echoes in the archaeological record. It was as if the plants themselves guarded these formulas, revealing just enough to tease the curious, a gentle reminder that not all wisdom bends to the digger's spade. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden haze over the village, the builders would retreat to their earthen lodges, where the air grew thick with the steam of herbal baths. Picture the scene: a low fire heating river stones, water poured over them in a steady stream, releasing vapors laced with mint and lavender. The scent was intoxicating, a blend of crisp green notes and warm earthiness that filled the space, encouraging deep breaths that slowed the heart and quieted the mind. In these moments, the builders found solace, their tunics damp from the mist, bodies unwinding as if the herbs carried away the weight of the mounds they had raised. Subtle wit surfaced in their conversations, a light jest about how even the sturdiest clay needed softening, a nod to the balance they sought between toil and tranquility. Historical accounts from Mississippian archaeology, drawn from sites like those at Cahokia and surrounding regions, reveal a people attuned to their environment's rhythms. Excavations have uncovered caches of medicinal plants, such as the seeds of sumpweed, preserved in storage pits, used perhaps to fortify against the seasonal chills that swept through the river valleys. The builders incorporated these into daily health rites, chewing on sprigs of peppermint to clear the mind or brewing teas from goldenrod to address the subtle discomforts of damp weather. Each practice was a testament to their ingenuity, adapting to the land's offerings with a grace that spoke of deep respect. The steam baths in particular echoed findings from similar cultures, where heat and herbs worked in concert to purge impurities, leaving a lingering sensation of renewal, like the first light of dawn on dew-covered grass. But not all was without shadow. Illness could creep in like a quiet intruder, and the builders faced it with detached resolve. In those times, they turned to remedies like elderberry syrup, its tart sweetness cutting through the air, to ward off the fevers that history suggests plagued their communities. The consequences were felt in the slowing of steps and the softening of voices. Yet they spoke of it not with fear, but as a natural turn in the cycle, much like the river's ebb and flow. Archaeological evidence, such as pollen analysis from burial mounds, points to the use of healing plants in funerary contexts, suggesting a belief in their power to ease the transition, though the details remain veiled in mystery. This enigma of lost recipes added a layer of intrigue, a subtle puzzle that invited contemplation rather than distress, as if the ancestors had tucked away their knowledge for safekeeping. As evening deepened, the builders shared stories around the fading fires, their tunics now dry and comfortable, the herbal scents lingering like a faint dream. They spoke of how the earth provided not just the clay for their mounds, but the very essence of health, a cycle as enduring as the stars above. In this calming ritual, there was a wit to their reflections, a gentle humor in acknowledging that even the greatest builders needed a moment to heal, lest they forget the strength and vulnerability. Yet, as the night air grew cool and the village settled into silence, one couldn't help but wonder what lay beyond, perhaps the tales of the stars or the whispers of the wind, drawing us toward new horizons. And so, with the earthy aroma still in the air, we turn our thoughts gently onward, to the next chapter of discovery. In the quiet heart of 12th century Cahokia, where the great mounds rose like ancient guardians under the vast prairie sky, the children of the Mississippian builders moved with a rhythm as old as the river itself. These young ones, clad in simple tunics of softened deerskin that brushed against their knees, played their part in the grand tapestry of family life, their small hands shaping the world around them. The air carried the faint scent of damp earth and wild herbs, a gentle whisper that seemed to cradle their every step, as if the land itself were singing them a lullaby of continuity and care. Among the families who tended the fertile fields near the towering Monk's Mound, children as young as 5 or 6 years old took up tasks that wove them into the fabric of survival. They carried baskets of rich, dark soil from the riverbanks, their soft footsteps leaving faint impressions in the dew-kissed grass, a subtle patter like raindrops on leaves. The weight of the earth and their woven carriers pressed against their small frames, warming their palms with its moist, gritty texture, while the sun's first rays painted golden highlights on their mud-streaked faces. These young builders, often the sons and daughters of skilled artisans and farmers, learned early the art of moving the land, not with the heavy toil of adults, but with a light, almost playful determination that hinted at the wit of youth, enduring the world's quiet demands. Historical accounts from Mississippian social records, etched in the patterns of pottery and the layouts of ceremonial spaces, suggest that children like these were essential in the construction of the earthen mounds that defined Cahokia's landscape. Yet, their roles extended beyond mere labor, blending into the subtle education of heritage. A girl in a tunic dyed with the faint hue of crushed berries might balance a small load of clay-rich soil on her hip, her fingers tracing the cool, slippery grains as she walked, the earthy aroma mingling with the sweet tang of nearby wildflowers. Her brother, perhaps, trailed behind, his bare feet sinking into the soft, yielding mud of the fields, each step accompanied by the gentle squelch that spoke of renewal and growth. These moments, recorded in the indirect echoes of artifacts and oral traditions passed down through generations, reveal how children contributed to the mound's expansion, carrying earth in rhythmic processions that mirrored the cycles of the seasons. In these families, the children's duties were tailored to their size and strength, a nurturing approach that allowed them to participate without overwhelming their spirits. They might gather handfuls of fertile loam from the low-lying areas, where the Mississippi's floods had deposited layers of nutrient-rich sediment, and transport it to the growing mounds. The sensation of the cool earth sliding through their fingers, like fine sand in a summer breeze, offered a tactile lesson in the land's generosity. One could imagine a child pausing to wipe a muddy hand across their forehead, leaving a streak that caught the light like a warrior's mark, all while a subtle smile played on their lips at the absurdity of being so small yet so vital. It was a wit born of innocence, a quiet acknowledgement that even the youngest could shape mountains from molehills. Yet, amid these documented roles, a gentle mystery lingers in the unrecorded tasks of these builder children, a shadow of curiosity that dances just beyond the reach of history's gaze. Mississippian social records, preserved in the subtle designs of shell-tempered pottery and the alignments of village structures, speak volumes about adult labors and communal achievements, but they whisper little of the smaller, everyday contributions that children might have made. Perhaps, in the hush of dawn, a child slipped away to tend a hidden patch of medicinal plants, their soft breaths mingling with the rustle of leaves, a secret act known only to the wind and the stars. Or maybe they fashioned tiny tools from discarded flint, their nimble fingers crafting playthings that doubled as aids in the fields, the smooth stone warming under their touch like a whispered promise. These uncharted duties, inferred from the gaps in archaeological findings, add a layer of enchantment to the narrative, inviting one to ponder the unseen threads that bound family and land. As the day unfolded, the children of Cahokia's mound builders moved with a grace that belied their efforts, their tunics swaying like river reeds in the breeze. They carried earth not just for the mounds, but for the sustenance of their kin, their roles echoing the balanced harmony of Mississippian society as described in the records of site excavations and comparative studies. A boy might hoist a basket higher on his shoulder, feeling the strain as a mild, fleeting ache that faded with the satisfaction of contribution, his ears attuned to the distant calls of migrating birds overhead. The sensory world around them was alive. The cool slip of mud between toes, the warm press of sunlight on skin, the faint earthy taste on lips from a hasty wipe of a dirty hand. In these details, one senses the subtle wit of survival, where even the youngest turn necessity into a form of gentle play, their laughter a soft undercurrent to the day's work. Historical accuracy, drawn from the Mississippian cultural artifacts like the Cahokia site ceremonial objects and the patterns in burial mounds, underscores how children's involvement was integral to the society's resilience. They were not mere helpers but apprentices in a living tradition, learning through the feel of the soil and the sound of communal rhythms. Yet the mystery persists. What other tasks might they have performed, hidden in the folds of time? Perhaps they whispered stories to the earth as they worked, their voices a soothing murmur that blended with the wind, ensuring the mounds grew not just with dirt, but with tales of ancestry. This enigma, distinct from the broader social fabrics explored elsewhere, invites a calm reflection on the unknown, a lullaby of what might have been. In the late afternoon light, as shadows lengthened across the fields, the children would set down their burdens, their hands caked with the day's harvest of earth, a comforting weight that spoke of accomplishment. The soft patter of their footsteps faded into the grass, leaving behind the faint scent of turned soil and the lingering warmth of shared endeavor. Through these roles, the builder children of Cahokia wove themselves into the eternal story of their people, their contributions a gentle force in the making of a world that endured. As evening approaches with the first stars blinking awake, thoughts turn to the wider wonders that await, where other tales of this ancient place may unfold. In the soft glow of a 12th century evening, the village of Cahokia nestled along the fertile banks of the Mississippi, where earthen mounds rose like gentle hills against the horizon. Here, amid the whispers of wind through tall grasses, the mound builders found their respite, their tunics of woven fibers draped loosely over weary frames as they settled into thatched huts. These structures, crafted from river reeds and sturdy poles, curved like cradled hands, offering a sanctuary from the day's labors. The air carried the faint scent of damp earth and smoldering hearths, a lull that eased the builders into the quiet rhythm of twilight, where the world seemed to pause in reflection. Imagine a builder, his tunic frayed at the edges from the touch of clay and stone, reclining on a mat of softened rushes. The hut's roof, layered with thick thatch, creaked ever so slightly under the weight of a passing breeze, a sound like distant whispers from the river spirits. Firelight danced from a central pit, casting warm, flickering shadows that played across the walls of wattle and daub, illuminating the simple tools hung with care chisels of flint and baskets of woven cord. The builders, men and women alike, spoke in murmurs, their voices blending with the rustle of leaves outside, as if the village itself were breathing in harmony with its inhabitants. This was a place of earthen embrace, where the day's toil in shaping the great mounds gave way to moments of serene repose, far from the clamor of construction. Historical accounts from Cahokia's excavations reveal that these huts formed clusters around the village periphery, each one a testament to the ingenuity of the Mississippian people. The builders, having spent their hours hauling earth and aligning stones, now rested in spaces that echoed the broader design of their world. The thatch overhead, meticulously layered to shed rain and hold warmth, spoke of generations of knowledge passed down through quiet demonstrations and shared gestures. One might picture a woman, her tunic adorned with subtle patterns of dyed fibers, adjusting a reed mat by the fire, her movements deliberate and graceful, as embers popped softly in the stillness. The air grew heavy with the aroma of roasting nuts and herbs, a subtle fragrance that wove through the hut like a comforting thread, inviting thoughts to wander. Yet, beneath this tranquility lay a mystery that time has only deepened: the enigma of the lost village designs. Excavations at Cahokia, conducted in the 20th century, uncovered fragments of these layouts, hinting at a complexity that modern eyes can scarcely reconstruct. The builders' huts, arranged in what seemed purposeful patterns, might have formed networks invisible to us now, pathways that aligned with celestial events or ancient rituals. One can almost feel the intrigue in the cool night air, as if the thatch itself held secrets, its creaking a faint echo of forgotten blueprints etched into the soil. Why were these designs abandoned, their intricacies buried under layers of sediment and time? Perhaps the builders themselves pondered this in their quieter moments, gazing into the firelight as shadows shifted like elusive memories. The sensory world of these huts was rich and enveloping, a balm for the spirit after days spent under the open sky. The fire's warmth radiated gently, chasing away the evening chill that crept in from the river, while the faint crackle of burning wood provided a rhythmic counterpoint to the distant calls of night birds. A builder might run his fingers over the tunic's fabric, coarse yet familiar, a reminder of the day's efforts in the mound fields. The earth beneath the hut floor, packed and smoothed by hand, retained a subtle warmth from the sun's earlier touch, offering a bed-like comfort that cradled the body in repose. Outside, the village hummed with the soft susurration of wind through the palisade walls, a natural lullaby that blended with the occasional rustle of a neighbor's thatch, as if the entire settlement sighed in unison. In this era, as revealed by archaeological findings, the Mississippian builders of Cahokia lived in a society where such moments of rest were sacred, a counterbalance to the monumental tasks that defined their days. The tunics, often made from plant fibers or animal hides, were not merely garments, but symbols of endurance, their folds catching the firelight in a play of golds and shadows. One excavation report from the Cahokia Mound's historic site describes similar artifacts, unearthed with care, showing how these everyday items were crafted with an eye for both utility and subtle beauty. A builder resting in his hut might trace the weave of his tunic absent-mindedly, feeling the texture that spoke of shared labor, while the thatch above released a faint, earthy scent with each gentle sway. As the night deepened, the mystery of the lost designs wove itself into the fabric of these evenings, a puzzle that lingered like the last embers of the fire. Scholars poring over excavation data have noted irregularities in the village layout's clusters of huts that deviated from the grander mound alignments, suggesting perhaps an experimental phase or a response to unseen challenges. Was it a deliberate evolution, a shift in communal vision that the builders debated in hushed tones by their hearths? The air in the hut grew thick with such questions, the creaking roof overhead seeming to murmur hints of answers long vanished. This enigma, distinct from the broader chronicles of Cahokia, invites a gentle wonder, a reminder that, even in repose, the human spirit quests for understanding. Sensory details abound in these recollections, drawn from the meticulous records of digs at the site. The feel of the mat beneath one's back, woven from river grasses, offered a yielding surface that eased tired muscles, while the faint tang of smoke from the fire pit lingered on the tongue, a taste of the day's end. The builders, in their tunics, might have shared stories in low voices, their words carried on the warm currents of air, evoking the vastness of the Mississippi's flow just beyond the village. One can imagine the subtle wit in their exchanges, a light-hearted remark about a wayward thatch beam that creaked unexpectedly, bringing a soft chuckle that dissolved into the night. Through the lens of history, these huts emerge as microcosms of Cahokia's world, places where the builders' lives unfolded in layers of simplicity and depth. Excavation reports highlight the use of local materials, like the reeds from nearby wetlands, which not only provided insulation but also a natural acoustic that softened sounds, turning the creak of a roof into a soothing melody. A builder lying back might close his eyes to the firelight's dance, feeling the weight of the tunic against his skin, a comforting pressure that grounded him in the present. Yet the mystery persisted, an undercurrent in the air, as if the very designs of the village were whispering through the thatch, urging contemplation. In the quietude, the builders found a peace that archaeology strives to recapture, a peace woven from the threads of daily existence. The tunics, with their practical cuts and enduring fabrics, served as a bridge between the individual and the collective, their rest a vital pause in the grand endeavor of mound building. The firelight, ever flickering, cast patterns on the walls that mimicked the lost designs, fleeting shadows that hinted at what once was. As the night wore on, The creaking roofs and warm scents created a cocoon of calm, a space where mysteries could simmer without urgency. Turning to more historical nuances, reports from Cahokia's excavations detail how these thatched structures were often oriented to catch the morning sun, their entrances framed by simple thresholds that welcome the light. A builder awakening from rest might feel the first rays filtering through the thatch, a gentle warmth that mirrored the fire's glow, while the tunic's fabric retained the night's coolness, a sensory contrast that refreshed the senses. This attention to environment, as evidenced in artifact analysis, underscored the builders' deep connection to their landscape, a harmony that extended to the enigmatic patterns of their village. The mystery of the lost designs, ever present, added a layer of intrigue to these evenings, a subtle puzzle that the builders might have pondered as they adjusted their tunics by the fire. Why had certain layouts faded from memory, their purposes obscured by time's passage? Excavations have uncovered partial grids and alignments that suggest intentionality, yet the full picture eludes us, leaving a space for imagination to wander. In this, there is a quiet wit to history's veil, a reminder that some secrets are meant to be savored rather than solved. As the fire dimmed to glowing embers, the hut's atmosphere grew even more serene. The creaking thatch, a final lullaby for the night. The builders and their tunics embodied the resilience of Cahokia, their rest a testament to the enduring spirit of creation. And as thoughts of the lost designs lingered, like echoes in the wind, one could sense the village's story continuing, a gentle transition to the broader tapestry of time. In the heart of the ancient city of Cahokia, where the great earthen mounds rose like gentle hills under the midday sun, the air carried a soft whisper of commerce. It was the 12th century, a time when skilled builders, clad in simple tunics woven from soft fibers, moved through the open markets with purposeful grace. These artisans, their hands calloused from shaping clay and stone, gathered to exchange the fruits of their labor, bartering finely crafted pottery that spoke of distant hearths and hidden kilns. The scene unfolded with a quiet rhythm, like a river flowing steadily through the plains, each transaction a thread in the vast tapestry of Mississippian trade. The builders arrived at dawn, their tunics draped loosely over broad shoulders, the fabric swaying with each step as they carried baskets laden with earthenware. The pottery gleamed subtly in the filtered light, vessels etched with intricate patterns of spirals and geometric designs, remnants of the Mississippian aesthetic that echoed across the river valleys. One builder, his tunic edged with faded dyes from traded roots, set down a large pot near a stall shaded by woven mats. The clay clinked softly against the wooden platform, a gentle sound that mingled with the distant calls of birds wheeling overhead. Dust rose faintly from the ground, carrying the earthy scent of sun-baked soil and the faint, smoky tang of nearby fires where other goods were prepared. In these markets, bartering was an art as precise as the pottery itself, guided by unwritten rules, passed down through generations. The builders spoke in measured tones, their voices low and soothing, like the rustle of leaves in a summer breeze. A builder might approach a trader from the southern reaches, offering a stack of bowls in exchange for shells harvested from the distant Gulf Coast. The shells, smooth and iridescent, held a subtle sheen that caught the light, their cool texture a contrast to the warm clay. As hands exchanged goods, the air filled with the soft clatter of pottery being inspected, each piece turned over with care to reveal its craftsmanship. The dust from the stalls settled on everything, a fine layer that muted the colors and lent a dreamlike quality to the scene, as if the world were wrapped in a gentle haze. Historical records from Mississippian sites, such as those unearthed at Cahokia and nearby Spiro, reveal that pottery was not merely utilitarian, but a symbol of status and connectivity. Builders like these drew from local clays, firing their creations in pits that left behind traces of ash and charred wood, evidence of techniques refined over centuries. One such practice involved the use of grog-crushed pottery fragments mixed into fresh clay to strengthen vessels, a method that ensured durability for the long journeys these items would undertake. As a builder negotiated, he might point to the fine lines etched into a jar, explaining its resistance to the elements, drawing on knowledge from trade networks that stretched from the Great Lakes to the Atlantic seaboard. The sensory details were integral: the weight of a pot in one's hands, its cool surface warming to the touch, the faint mineral aroma of the clay, reminiscent of the riverbanks where it was sourced. Yet amid this serene exchange, there lingered a quiet mystery: the absence of recorded trade logs. Unlike the meticulous accounts kept by later societies, the Mississippian builders left no scrolls or tablets to chronicle their dealings. This enigma, pieced together from archaeological fragments at sites like Cahokia's Grand Plaza, invites a subtle wonder. How did such a vast network operate without written ledgers? Perhaps the builders relied on memory and oral traditions, their transactions etched not on paper but in the minds of those who participated. One could imagine a builder pausing, his tunic brushing against a stall's edge, as he recalled a previous barter through a shared gesture or a nod, the details lost to time like whispers carried away by the wind. This unrecorded aspect added a layer of intrigue, a calming puzzle that unfolded in the background, much like the slow drift of clouds across the sky. The bartering continued with a wit as subtle as the patterns on the pottery. A builder might jest lightly, his voice carrying a hint of amusement, about the weight of a particularly hefty urn, comparing it to the burdens of travel without ever raising his tone above a murmur. "This one has seen more rivers than I have seasons," he might say, eliciting a knowing smile from his counterpart, who responded by offering a string of beads in trade. The beads, crafted from polished stone or shell, clicked softly as they were handled, their smooth surfaces sliding against fingers in a rhythmic dance. Sensory elements abounded: the warmth of the sun on exposed skin, the occasional breeze carrying the scent of wild herbs from the surrounding prairies, and the muted thud of footsteps on the packed earth paths. Drawing from historical examples such as the pottery styles documented at Cahokia's artifact caches, the builders' trade practices emphasized reciprocity and quality. Vessels from the American Bottom region, with their distinctive bottle shapes and incised decorations, were highly sought after, often exchanged for exotic materials like copper from the north. A builder in his tunic would carefully assess an incoming offer, perhaps a bundle of fibers for weaving, feeling their texture to ensure they were as fine as his pottery. The process was methodical, almost meditative, with each agreement fostering a sense of balance in the exchange. The clinking of clay against other goods created a soothing backdrop, a natural symphony that blended with the ambient sounds of the market, the occasional low hum of conversation, the rustle of fabrics, and the distant flow of the Mississippi River. As the day progressed, the mystery of the unrecorded logs deepened, offering a detached reflection on the impermanence of human endeavors. In the archaeological record, fragments of pottery and shell middens provide clues, but the full scope of these trades remains elusive, a calming enigma that invites contemplation rather than frustration. One might ponder, in the quiet moments between barters, how these interactions shaped the broader Mississippian world, their consequences felt in the growth of Cahokia as a cultural hub without the need for formal documentation. The builders' tunics, now dusted with the fine particles of the market, moved with an unhurried pace, their wearers pausing to share a simple meal of roasted grains and herbs, the aromas wafting gently through the air. The pottery, once bartered, would journey onward, carried by traders to distant villages, its designs a silent testament to the connections forged that day. In this way, the practices of the Mississippian mound builders wove a web of commerce that, though unlogged, endured through the ages. Yet, as the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows over the mounds, the energy of the market softened further. The builders gathered their newfound goods, their tunics swaying in the evening breeze, and with a final exchange of nods they parted ways. The mystery of their unrecorded trades lingered like a faint echo, a soothing riddle that transitioned seamlessly into the quiet rhythms of the night, where thoughts might drift toward the stories yet to unfold in the world beyond. In the soft light of a late autumn evening in 12th century Cahokia, the great earthen mounds rose like gentle hills against the horizon, their slopes softened by shadows that stretched long across the fertile plains. Here, among the bustling heart of the Mississippian world, a gathering unfolded not in solemn ritual or tight-knit fellowship, but in the simple joy of builders pausing from their labors to celebrate the rhythms of the earth. Men and women, clad in tunics of woven fibers dyed in earthy hues of ochre and deep green, moved with an easy grace, their garments fluttering like leaves in the breeze, as they assembled near the base of the largest mound. The air carried a whisper of anticipation, a calm prelude to the festivals that marked the turning of seasons, where the focus lingered on the craft of building and the harvest's bounty, untouched by deeper spiritual ties or communal vows. The builders, strong from years of shaping the land with baskets of soil and sharpened stones, gathered in clusters, their faces lit by the warm glow of fires that crackled low and steady. Each flame danced with a hypnotic rhythm, casting flickers that played across the tunic's intricate patterns. Threads of plant fibers intertwined with shells traded from distant rivers, symbols not of faith, but of the hands that crafted them. As the sun dipped below the tree line, the first drums began their call, a steady echo that rolled through the air like distant thunder, not harsh or demanding, but a soothing pulse that invited the body to sway. Thud, thud. The beats merged with the rustle of wind through the tall grasses, creating a lull that enveloped the scene in a blanket of sound, as if the earth itself were humming a quiet tune. Around the fires, the builders arranged simple feasts, their movements deliberate and unhurried. Tables of bark and woven mats held piles of roasted maize, its sweet, smoky aroma rising to mingle with the crisp night air, a scent that evoked memories of fields tended under the summer sun. The kernels popped gently in the flames, releasing a warmth that seemed to seep into the bones, while platters of wild berries and nuts added bursts of tartness and crunch, textures that spoke of the land's generosity. One builder, his tunic frayed at the edges from days spent hauling earth, reached for a handful, his fingers brushing against the cool, damp soil still clinging to the roots, a subtle reminder of the mounds they had raised together. There was a quiet wit in these gatherings, a knowing smile shared as someone mimed the exaggerated effort of lifting a basket, turning toil into a light-hearted jest that floated on the breeze like a feather. As the festival deepened into night, the drums grew more intricate, their echoes weaving through the crowd like threads in a tapestry. Each beat carried the story of the builder's world, not through words or chants, but through the vibrations that traveled up from the ground, resonating in the feet and hearts of those who listened. The fires, fed with dry wood from the surrounding forests, glowed with a golden hue that painted the mounds in soft oranges and reds, their light reflecting off the tunic's surfaces like stars caught in fabric. Women with garlands of dried flowers woven into their hair moved gracefully, their steps a dance of balance and precision, mirroring the careful placement of stones and earth that defined their daily work. The air grew fragrant with the smoke of smoldering herbs, an earthy blend that lingered on the skin and in the memory, evoking the vastness of the plains and the rivers that fed them. Yet, amid this celebration, a gentle mystery lingered, one that whispered through the shadows and the unscripted pauses between drumbeats. The festivals of the Cahokian builders held rites that history has not fully captured. Practices passed down through gestures and shared glances rather than etched records or enduring monuments. What precise customs guided these evenings? Perhaps a silent exchange of crafted tools under the firelight, or a patterned arrangement of harvest offerings that spoke of innovation and ingenuity, remains a soft enigma, untouched by the chronicles that detail other aspects of their lives. It was not a puzzle of the divine or the social, but one of human creativity, a subtle veil over how these gatherings fostered the very skills that shaped the mounds. One might imagine, in the quiet hours, a builder tracing patterns in the dirt with a stick, a fleeting design that vanished with the dawn, leaving only the echo of possibility. The night air cooled, carrying with it the distant call of owls and the rustle of leaves, a symphony that blended seamlessly with the festival's hum. Children, too young for the heavy labor of mound building, darted between the adults, their laughter a light ripple that added a playful note to the scene. They wore smaller versions of the tunics, simple and unadorned, and chased fireflies that flickered like tiny lanterns, their wonder a testament to the builder's legacy. As the flames dimmed to embers, the builders shared stories of past harvests, their voices low and melodic, describing the feel of warm soil under bare feet and the satisfaction of a perfectly aligned wall of earth. There was a wit in their tales, a gentle tease about a basket that tipped just so, turning mishap into a shared chuckle that softened the night's edge. In the background, the mounds stood sentinel, their forms a testament to generations of patient work, each layer added with the precision of a festival dance. The builders, resting now on mats softened by grasses, felt the ground's firmness beneath them, a comforting presence that spoke of stability and growth. The air, still tinged with the scent of roasted grains and wood smoke, wrapped around them like a familiar cloak, while the drum echoes faded to a faint whisper, leaving only the stars to twinkle overhead. It was in these moments that the mystery deepened, a quiet question of what unseen innovations these festivals might have sparked. Perhaps a new technique for weaving stronger fibers, or a method for aligning mounds with the sun's path. Details lost to time, but felt in the air's subtle charge. As the celebration wound down, the builders began to disperse, their tunics rustling against the grass as they made their way back to simple dwellings. The fires were banked, their glow reducing to a gentle warmth that promised renewal with the morning light. Yet, even as the night grew still, the essence of the festival lingered, a calming thread that connected the builders to their craft in ways that words could scarcely capture. In the distance, the mounds loomed softly, their shadows merging with the darkness, holding within them the secrets of unrecorded rites that continued to intrigue, a mystery as enduring as the earth itself. And so, as the first hints of dawn painted the sky in pale strokes, the scene in Cahokia faded into memory, leaving room for what might come next, where other tales of the ancient world await their turn to unfold. In the soft glow of a 12th century Cahokia dawn, where the Mississippi Valley's mist clung to the earth like a gentle veil, women of the Mississippian Mound builders moved through their world with quiet purpose, their tunics, woven from soft fibers of native plants, draped comfortably over their forms as they tended to the rhythms of daily life in the village clusters near the great mounds. These women, the backbone of their families, embodied the steady pulse of existence, their hands shaping not just sustenance but the very fabric of society. Far from the clamor of ceremonial grounds, They worked in the shadowed spaces of thatched homes and open courtyards, their actions a testament to endurance and skill drawn from generations past. One such woman, perhaps named for the river's whisper in an ancient tongue, knelt by her grinding stone at the break of day. The metate, a broad, flat stone smoothed by years of use, rested on the packed earth floor of her home, its surface cool and unyielding under her palms. She wore a simple tunic, dyed in earthy tones from crushed roots and berries, its fabric loose enough to allow the morning breeze to brush against her skin like a faint caress. With a mano, the handheld grinding tool, she pressed down on handfuls of dried maize kernels, the grains yielding slowly to her rhythmic motion. The sound was a soft, persistent hush, like the river's flow over smooth pebbles, blending with the distant calls of waking birds. Each stroke released a faint, sweet aroma, the earthy scent of corn mingling with the smoky undertones of a nearby fire pit where embers from the previous night still glowed. In these moments, the women's roles unfolded with a grace that spoke of deep-rooted tradition. Historical accounts from Mississippian artifacts and settlement patterns, as pieced together by archaeologists, reveal how these women were central to agricultural processing, transforming the harvest into the sustenance that fueled their communities. They ground maize not merely as a chore, but as an art, their movements precise and meditative, ensuring the flour was fine enough for the flatbreads that would sustain families through the seasons. The firelight danced across their faces as they worked, casting warm, flickering shadows that softened the lines of labor etched into their features. One might imagine the warmth of the flames seeping into their bones, a comforting counterpoint to the cool dawn air, while the subtle crackle of burning wood added a whisper of wit to the scene nature's own lullaby, as if the fire chuckled at the maize's stubborn resistance. Beyond the grinding stones, women's tasks extended to the careful preparation of meals, where they stirred pots over low flames, the steam rising like gentle spirits into the air. The sensory tapestry was rich, the tactile weight of clay vessels in their hands, cool and slightly rough. The visual play of colors as dried herbs were added, greens and reds blending like a muted palette, and the auditory hum of village life, where the occasional rustle of leaves or the soft thud of tools against earth created a harmonious backdrop. In Cahokia's thriving society, as documented through the analysis of household remains and tool distributions, these women managed the domestic sphere with an efficiency that supported the larger mound-building endeavors of their kin. Their tunics, often adorned with simple patterns from dyed fibers, spoke of both practicality and a quiet pride, allowing freedom of movement as they moved between tasks. Yet there was a deeper layer to their contributions, one that wove through the fabric of daily routines with subtle complexity. They oversaw the storage of surplus grains in woven baskets, their fingers deftly tying knots that held the community's future secure. The air around them carried the faint, nutty scent of freshly ground flour, aroma that lingered like a promise of nourishment, while the warmth of the sun climbing higher brought a golden hue to their surroundings. In these acts, women maintained the balance of family life, their roles echoing the stability of the great mounds themselves, structures built not just by male laborers, but sustained by the unseen efforts of those who prepared the feasts and crafted the tools. As the day progressed, the women might pause to adjust their tunics, the fabric shifting with a soft whisper against their skin, and turn their attention to other essentials. They fashioned pottery from local clays, their hands shaping vessels that would hold water drawn from the nearby river, its cool flow a refreshing contrast to the day's growing heat. The process was tactile and intimate, the slip of wet clay under their fingers, the faint mineral scent rising as it dried, and the gentle pop of air bubbles as pieces were fired in earthen kilns. These artifacts, uncovered in Mississippian sites, underscore the women's expertise, their creations not only functional but enduring, much like the society they helped sustain. Amidst this rhythm, a subtle mystery lingered, one that historical records only hint at through the silence of unexcavated spaces. What unseen tasks did these women perform beyond the grinding stones and hearths? Archaeological evidence from Cahokia, such as the distribution of domestic tools and the patterns of household layouts, suggests layers of responsibility that remain partially obscured. Perhaps they held knowledge of herbal remedies, passed down in whispers that the wind carried away before scribes could capture them, or engaged in rituals tied to the cycles of the moon and earth, their actions a quiet counterpoint to the public ceremonies atop the mounds. This enigma, distinct from the communal ties or youthful labors of others, adds a layer of intrigue, a gentle puzzle wrapped in the everyday. One might ponder, with a touch of wit, if the maze itself held secrets, whispering tales to the women as they ground it, stories that dissolved into the flour like dreams fading at dawn. In the afternoon light, as shadows lengthened across the village, the women continued their work with unwavering focus. They might gather wild plants for dyes, the vibrant scents of crushed leaves filling the air, or mend garments by the fire's edge, the thread gliding through fabric with a soothing rhythm. The firelight, now brighter against the dimming sky, cast a calming glow, its warmth enveloping them like a familiar embrace. Historical insights from Mississippian social structures indicate that these roles were not merely survival-oriented but integral to cultural continuity, ensuring that the knowledge of crop processing and resource management flowed from one generation to the next. As evening approached, the women's efforts culminated in shared meals, where the fruits of their labor-fresh breads and stews brought a sense of fulfillment. The sensory details were profound. The satisfying crunch of ground maize between teeth, the comforting heat of food against the cooling air, and the soft murmur of voices in the background. Yet, even here, the mystery persisted, a subtle undercurrent in the calm narrative of their lives. What other wisdom did they guard? In the hidden corners of their homes, or the depths of their traditions? Waiting to be uncovered by future eyes. Through it all, the women's roles in 12th century Cahokia wove a tapestry of resilience and grace, their contributions as enduring as the mounds that rose against the horizon. As the stars began to emerge, twinkling like distant fires, one could almost hear the faint echo of their unrecorded stories, a lullaby carried on the wind. And so, from this quiet realm of grinding stones and firelight, we turn toward the broader mysteries of the Mississippian world, where other threads of history await. In the heart of the ancient city of Cahokia, where the great earthen mounds rose like silent guardians against the twilight sky, a group of builders gathered as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was the 12th century. A time when the Mississippi River's gentle currents whispered secrets to the land, and the air carried the earthy scent of freshly turned soil mingled with the faint, sweet aroma of blooming prairie flowers. These men and women, their tunics woven from soft fibers of native plants, had spent their days shaping the massive mounds with calloused hands and unyielding determination. Now, as stars began to pierce the deepening blue, they sought solace in the flickering light of a communal fire, its flames dancing lazily and casting warm golden hues across their weathered faces. The fire crackled softly, a rhythmic sound that seemed to echo the steady pulse of the river nearby, each pop of resin, a tiny reminder of the forests that had given way to this thriving settlement. Seated in a loose circle on the cool, damp earth, the builders leaned against the rough bark of felled logs, their bodies easing into the embrace of the night. One elder, his tunic frayed at the edges from years of labor, began to speak in a voice as smooth as the wind through tall grasses. He recited tales of their ancestors, stories passed down through generations, not as rigid lessons, but as flowing rivers of words that meandered through the listeners' minds. The air grew thick with the scent of wood smoke, a comforting veil that wrapped around them like a well-worn blanket, while the distant calls of night birds added a melodic undercurrent to his narration. In those evenings, the builders found a quiet rhythm to their storytelling, a tradition born from the long days of hauling earth and stone. A young woman, her tunic adorned with simple patterns of dyed fibers, joined in, her voice a gentle murmur that wove through the crackling logs like a thread through fabric. She spoke of the great migrations, how their forebears had followed the rivers and stars to build Cahokia into a bustling center of life. The fire's glow illuminated the subtle lines on their faces, etching stories of their own into the light and shadow, and the warmth seeped into their bones, easing the aches of labor. One might chuckle softly at the elder's wry observation, a subtle wit hidden in his words, like when he described a clever ancestor outwitting a sly fox in the hunt, a tale that hinted at the cleverness needed to survive in a world of uncertainties. As the flames flickered and popped, releasing sparks that danced upward like fireflies, the listeners closed their eyes, letting the sensory tapestry unfold. The scent of roasting nuts, gathered from the nearby woods and placed on flat stones near the fire, mingled with the earthy aroma, creating a soothing blend that evoked memories of harvests past. The builders' voices rose and fell in a lullaby-like cadence, soft and unhurried, carrying the weight of generations without the burden of haste. One tale spoke of a vast plain where the wind sculpted the land, shaping it into the very mounds they built, a narrative that painted pictures in the mind with strokes of sound and scent. The elder's words flowed like the Mississippi itself, steady and inevitable, drawing listeners into a world where every detail, the cool night breeze brushing against skin, the faint rustle of leaves overhead, became part of the story. Yet amid this serene exchange, there lingered a quiet mystery, one that wrapped around the tales like the smoke curling into the night sky. These oral traditions, recited with such care, held fragments of a larger history, stories that had traveled through time on the breath of storytellers. But not all had survived the passage of years. Many tales had slipped away, lost to the winds of change and the silence of forgotten voices. One might ponder, in the gentle pause between recitations, how entire epics of courage and ingenuity had faded, leaving only echoes in the minds of those who came after. The builders spoke of this loss with a detached curiosity, a subtle wit in their reflections, as if to say that even the mightiest river loses drops along its journey. It was a mystery that added a layer of depth to their gatherings, a reminder that what was shared by the fire was but a glimpse of a vast, unseen tapestry. The young woman continued, her voice a soothing balm, describing how the builders' ancestors had learned to read the land's subtle signs, the way the soil shifted underfoot, or the patterns of migrating birds to craft their monumental works. Her words evoked the feel of damp clay between fingers, the satisfying weight of a well-placed stone, and the quiet satisfaction of a day's labor complete. The fire's heat radiated outward, warming the circle as if it were a living entity, its crackles providing a counterpoint to the soft cadence of speech. Another builder, an older man with a tunic patched from various travels, added his piece, recounting tales of resourcefulness in the face of scarcity, his voice carrying a hint of wry humor as he described how a simple tool, cleverly adapted, had turned the tide in a challenging season. As the night deepened, the sensory details wove a spell around them. The cool grass beneath them released a fresh green scent with each shift of weight, while the distant hum of insects created a backdrop of natural music. The elder's tale turned to the everyday heroics of their people, stories of those who had shaped the earth with nothing but ingenuity and community, their voices blending into a harmonious flow. One could almost taste the smoke on the air, a faint bitterness that contrasted with the sweetness of the narratives, reminding all that life, like their stories, held both light and shadow. And in this there was a subtle wit, a gentle nudge at the absurdities of existence, like how a misplaced step in the mounds could lead to unexpected discoveries, turning mishaps into tales of laughter. The mystery of the lost tales wove through their recitations, a thread of intrigue that never fully unraveled. They spoke of how oral traditions relied on memory, a fragile vessel in the vast sea of time, and how wars, migrations, and the simple passage of seasons had claimed so many stories. Yet, in their sharing, there was a quiet resilience, a determination to preserve what remained. The fire's embers glowed softly, their light flickering across faces etched with both weariness and wonder, as if the tales themselves were alive in the flames. As the circle continued, another voice emerged, that of a builder not yet marked by many years, her tunic still bright and unblemished. She recited a story of innovation, how their people had developed techniques for stacking earth that withstood the rains and winds, her words painting vivid scenes of teamwork and discovery. The air grew cooler, the fire's warmth a cherished anchor, while the scent of dew settling on the grass added a fresh note to the night. The elder nodded approvingly, his subtle wit shining through in a light comment about how even the mightiest mound began as a single handful of soil, a reminder that great things often started small and unassuming. Through it all, the sensory world enveloped them, the soft rustle of tunics against skin, the occasional spark leaping into the dark, the comforting rhythm of shared breaths. These gatherings were more than mere retellings. They were a bridge to the past, a way to honor the builders who had come before. And yet the mystery persisted, a gentle enigma that invited reflection. For who could say what gems of wisdom had vanished with the winds? The builders' traditions, recited in this calming ritual, offered a glimpse into a world where stories shaped the very earth they stood upon. As the fire began to dim, its last crackles fading into whispers, the group fell into a peaceful silence, the night air wrapping around them like a lullaby. The elder's final words lingered, a soft transition to the dreams that awaited, where the mysteries of the past might unfold in the quiet of sleep. And so, as the stars watched over Cahokia, the builders dispersed, their hearts a little lighter, carrying the echoes of tales that would endure, at least for another night. Word count 1523. In the heart of the vast plains where the Mississippi River whispered its eternal secrets, the city of Cahokia stood as a testament to human ingenuity. It was the 12th century, a time when the sun rose gently over earth and mounds, casting long shadows that danced like quiet spirits across the landscape. Here, amid the rhythmic hum of daily life, the mound builders and artisans of the Mississippian people converged in the open-air markets, their interactions unfolding with the steady grace of a river's flow. Clad in simple tunics, woven from softened fibers, the builders moved with purposeful ease, their hands calloused from shaping the great earthworks that defined their world. These men and women, sturdy and unassuming, bartered for tools that would aid in their monumental labors, exchanging goods under a sky that seemed to cradle the earth in its vast embrace. The market sprawled like a living tapestry beneath the warm midday sun, its air filled with the subtle scent of sun-baked clay and the faint, earthy tang of freshly turned soil. Builders, their tunics draped loosely over broad shoulders, approached the artisans' stalls with a calm deliberation, their footsteps soft on the packed ground. One builder, his face etched with the quiet lines of experience, held a bundle of polished chert tools, blades and scrapers, glinting dully in the light. He nodded toward an artisan seated cross-legged on a low mat, her fingers deftly arranging an array of flint knives and bone awls. The clinking of stones as she adjusted her display created a soothing rhythm, like distant rain on a thatched roof, a sound that eased the mind and invited reflection. "These will serve your mounds well," she said, her voice a gentle murmur that carried no urgency, only the subtle wit of one who understood the weight of creation. The builder smiled faintly, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and in return he offered a handful of river-smoothed pebbles, each one selected for its potential in crafting finer edges. As the exchange unfolded, the market buzzed with a lullaby-like harmony, the kind that might lull a weary traveler into a peaceful repose. The air was alive with sensory whispers. The dusty goods piled high on woven mats, their surfaces coated in a fine layer of silt that sparkled when caught by the breeze. The faint rustle of leather pouches as builders rummaged for trade items, the warm, grounding aroma of roasted nuts from nearby fires, mingling with the crisp scent of newly hewn wood. An artisan, his tunic tied at the waist with a cord of twisted fibers, demonstrated a newly forged adze, its edge honed to a precise sharpness. He ran his thumb lightly over the tool, producing a soft, metallic whisper that echoed the river's gentle current. "Forged from the heart of the hills," he remarked with a hint of wry humor, as if the earth itself conspired to aid your hands. The builder accepted it, turning it in the light, feeling the weight settle comfortably in his palm, a perfect balance that spoke of craftsmanship passed down through generations. In these interactions, the builders and artisans wove a web of mutual dependence, their trades rooted in the Mississippian networks that stretched across rivers and plains. Historical records from excavated sites, like those at Cahokia's Grand Plazas, reveal how tools such as grooved axes and shell-tempered hoes were not merely exchanged but became symbols of shared ingenuity. A builder might trade a set of stone mauls, their surfaces worn smooth from countless strikes against the earth, for an artisan's supply of cordage made from native fibers. The process was deliberate, almost meditative, with each party assessing the goods by touch and sight, the cool, solid feel of a basalt hammer, the faint grain of wood in a handle that had been shaped by patient whittling. Sensory details abounded, the soft thud of a tool being placed on a mat, the whisper of dust rising and settling like a breath exhaled into the wind, the subtle warmth of sun-heated metal against skin. Yet, beneath this serene surface lay the mystery of unrecorded trade deals, those silent agreements that slipped through the fingers of history like grains of sand. In the shadows of the market stalls, where the light filtered softly through overhanging branches, builders and artisans sometimes leaned in close, their voices dropping to hushed tones that blended with the rustling leaves. These were the deals not etched into the bark tablets or marked in the communal ledgers, exchanges of rare flint nodules from distant quarries or secret caches of obsidian, items whose origins remained shrouded in the mists of forgotten journeys. One might imagine a builder slipping a small, intricately carved bone pendant into an artisan's hand, a token for a favored tool, with no witness but the wind. The mystery lingered, a gentle enigma that added a layer of intrigue to the daily rhythm, as if the very air held secrets waiting to be unraveled. Historical examples from Mississippian trade patterns, documented through artifact distributions at sites like Spiro and Moundville, suggest that such unrecorded transactions were common, fostering alliances that strengthened the community's resilience without the need for overt documentation. As the afternoon sun arched higher, casting a golden haze over the scene, the interactions grew more intricate. A group of builders, their tunics slightly frayed from days spent hauling earth, gathered around an artisan's display of grinding stones. These tools, heavy and reassuring in their solidity, were essential for shaping the clay used in mound construction. The artisan, a woman with a calm demeanor and a subtle smile that hinted at unspoken knowledge, demonstrated the stone's grit against a piece of wood, producing a soothing, rhythmic scrape that evoked the sound of waves lapping at the riverbank. "Feel how it holds its edge," she said, her words laced with a quiet wit. "Like the river that never tires of its path." In return, the builders offered bundles of cordage, twisted from the strong fibers of local plants, their textures rough yet comforting under the fingers. The exchange was not just transactional. It was a dance of reciprocity, where each item carried the story of its making, the earthy scent of the clay pits, the cool touch of river water used in tempering, the faint woody aroma of the tool's origins. Sensory details enriched every moment. The warm press of the sun on exposed skin, the gentle creak of wicker baskets as they were shifted, the distant call of birds echoing like a natural symphony. One builder paused to examine a set of flint flakes, their edges sharp yet inviting, running his fingers over them with a reverence that spoke of his own craft. The artisan watched with a detached amusement, her gaze steady and unhurried, as if she knew the tools would find their purpose in the great mounds rising nearby. In this way, the market became a microcosm of Cahokia's world, where the builder's tunics, often adorned with simple patterns dyed from native plants, served as a canvas for the day's stories. The fabric whispered against the air as they moved, a soft counterpoint to the clinking stones and the dusty shuffle of goods. As evening approached, the interactions took on a more reflective tone, the mystery of those unrecorded deals weaving through the fading light. Historical insights from Mississippian trade records indicate that such exchanges often involved items like copper beads or marine shells, brought from afar and traded in ways that left no trace in the official annals. A builder might nod to an artisan, sealing a deal with a shared glance, their understanding as enduring as the mounds themselves. This enigma, subtle and sleep-friendly in its telling, added a layer of wonder to the scene, inviting contemplation without disruption. Through it all, the calming rhythm persisted, a lullaby of human endeavor that soothed the soul. The builders and artisans parted ways as the sun dipped low, their tunics fluttering like gentle flags in the breeze, carrying with them the echoes of their trades. And as the market quieted, one might feel the transition to new tales, where the mysteries of Cahokia's world continued to unfold in whispers. In the fading light of a late autumn day in 12th century Cahokia, where the great earthen mounds rose like gentle guardians over the river valley, a quiet rhythm settled over the builder's camp. Men and women, in simple tunics of woven fibers, softened by wear and the day's labor, gathered around low fires that flickered with a warm, inviting glow. The air carried a faint whisper of wood smoke and damp earth, mingling with the subtle grit of dust that hung like a soft veil, reminding all who breathed it of the timeless soil they shaped. Here, amid the scattered tools and resting forms, the builders turned their hands to the careful art of maintenance, a ritual as essential as the rising sun. These tunics, dyed in earthy tones of ochre and green from crushed plants gathered along the Mississippi's banks, draped loosely over shoulders marked by the day's efforts. The fabric brushed against skin still warm from the sun, a comforting weight that spoke of shared work and quiet camaraderie. One builder, his face lined with the wisdom of many seasons, sat cross-legged on a mat of woven rushes, his tunic sleeves rolled to reveal forearms dusted with fine particles of stone. In his hands rested a chert knife, its edge dulled from hours of use in shaping the world around them. With deliberate strokes, he drew a smooth river stone along the blade, the scraping sound emerging like a hushed lullaby, a gentle scrape that echoed through the camp and lulled the senses into a state of peaceful focus. The process began with inspection, a moment of reverence for the tools that had served them well. These implements, crafted from flint and chert, sourced from nearby quarries, places where archaeological digs, centuries later, would uncover similar artifacts, held stories in their very forms. The builders ran their fingers over the grooved surfaces, feeling the cool, rough texture that spoke of ancient craftsmanship. A young woman, her tunic tied at the waist with a cord of twisted fibers, lifted a grooved axe head to the firelight, turning it slowly to catch the play of shadows. The air around her carried a whisper of flint dust, fine particles that danced in the glow and settled on her skin like a light, invisible mist, carrying with it the earthy scent of the quarries from which the stone had been hewn. She paused, her movements deliberate and unhurried, as if sharing a secret with the tool itself. As the scraping continued, the camp filled with a symphony of soft sounds that wove together in a calming tapestry. The rhythmic stroke of stone against stone created a steady cadence, not harsh but soothing, like the distant flow of the river that sustained their world. One could almost hear the faint crackle of the fire beneath it all, its warmth radiating outward to chase away the evening chill. The builders worked in pairs, their tunics brushing against one another as they leaned in close, exchanging murmured words that carried a subtle wit, a light jest about a particularly stubborn edge, or a wry observation on how the stone seemed to hold onto its sharpness like a reluctant friend. "This one fights back," one might say with a gentle smile, his voice low and melodic, as if lulling the tool into cooperation rather than demanding it. Sensory details emerged in every gesture, drawing the mind into the scene with an almost dreamlike quality. The dusty air, stirred by the slightest breeze, carried the mineral tang of freshly worked flint, a scent that lingered on the tongue like a faint, earthy spice. Fingers traced the edges, feeling the transition from smooth to serrated, the stone's cool surface warming under their touch. In one corner, a builder applied a thin layer of animal fat to a polished adze, the grease gleaming softly in the firelight and releasing a mild, nutty aroma that blended with the smoke. This was no mere chore, but a meditative act, where the weight of the tool in hand became a connection to the land itself, its textures and scents evoking the vastness of the Mississippi Valley. Historical echoes surfaced in these moments, drawn from the artifacts that modern eyes would one day study with wonder. The chert knives and axes, much like those unearthed in Cahokia's mounds, bore the marks of careful maintenance, polished surfaces, and precise flaking that spoke of skilled hands long past. Builders in those tunics might have used techniques honed over generations, perhaps wrapping tools in soft hides to protect them overnight, or gently tapping flakes away with antler hammers that produced a soft, resonant tap-tap like rain on leaves. These methods, inferred from archaeological finds such as the caches of tools discovered in pit features, ensured longevity and efficiency, allowing the builders to return to their tasks with tools as reliable as the seasons. Yet, amid this serene routine, a subtle mystery wove through the air, as intangible as the dust that settled on their tunics. The designs of these tools, with their intricate flaking and balanced forms, hinted at knowledge that time would one day erase. One builder, his eyes reflecting the fire's dance, might pause to examine a particularly fine flint point, its symmetry suggesting innovations lost to the ages. "What secrets do you hold?" he might muse inwardly, his tone detached and contemplative, as if observing from a distance the consequences of forgotten artistry. Archaeological evidence from Cahokia reveals tools with unique attributes, perhaps a specialized groove or an unusual curvature that defy full explanation, leaving scholars to ponder how such designs were conceived. This enigma, distinct from the broader tales of construction or daily life, added a layer of gentle intrigue, a whisper of what might have been carried away by the winds of centuries. As the evening deepened, the builders continued their work with unwavering patience, their tunics now dusted with a fine residue of their efforts, a testament to the care they invested. The scraping sound softened, blending into the night's quiet hum, while the air grew cooler, carrying the faint moisture of the river. One by one, they set their tools aside, wrapping them in cloths of soft fiber that smelled of sun-dried grass, ensuring they would be ready for the morrow. In these acts, there was a subtle wit to their world, a quiet acknowledgement that even the simplest stone could outlast empires, its mysteries enduring like the mounds themselves. The camp's peace extended outward, a calming balm that seemed to hush the surrounding world. Sensory layers unfolded. The warmth of the fire against chilled skin, the satisfying weight of a well-maintained tool, the earthy taste of the air as it filled the lungs. Historical examples like the polished celts and bifacial points found in Mississippian sites underscored the precision of their craft, each detail expanding the narrative of a culture that thrived on such rituals. Yet, the mystery lingered, a soft undercurrent. How had they achieved such elegance in design, only for it to fade into obscurity? It was a puzzle that invited reflection, not fear, its consequences felt as a gentle loss rather than a wound. In the end, as the builders settled into their rest, the camp exhaled a collective sigh, the tools gleaming faintly in the dimming light. This moment of maintenance, so intimately tied to their existence, transitioned seamlessly into the broader tapestry of their lives, where each careful stroke paved the way for what lay ahead. And as the night deepened, one might imagine the river's flow carrying whispers of these secrets onward, toward the next chapter yet to unfold. In the hush of a 14th century twilight, where the great river Mississippi whispered secrets to the stars, the ancient mounds of Cahokia stood as silent sentinels. Once teeming with life, these earthen giants now slumbered under a veil of quietude, their contours softened by time and the patient embrace of wild grasses. The air carried a faint earthy scent, like damp clay left to dry in the sun, and the fields around them stretched out in serene repose, dotted with the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. It was a place where the world seemed to exhale, releasing the weight of forgotten grandeur into the night. Far from the bustling days of old, the builders who once shaped these monumental forms had faded into memory. Imagine them now, if you will, in tunics worn thin by seasons of labor, their fabrics frayed at the edges like the petals of a late-blooming flower. These garments, once vibrant with dyes from crushed roots and berries, now hung loosely on figures that moved with a weary grace through the shadows. One might picture a lone figure pausing atop a lesser mound, the fabric brushing against crumbling earth that yielded softly underfoot. The soil, rich and redolent of ancient fires, crumbled with the gentlest touch, releasing a whisper of dust that danced in the fading light. It was not a violent disintegration, but a slow, almost tender unraveling, as if the land itself were sighing into slumber. The mounds, those colossal testaments to human ingenuity, had begun their decline in ways that felt as inevitable as the turning of seasons. Monk's Mound, the greatest among them, loomed with a dignified weariness, its slopes gently eroded by rains that fell like soft lullabies from the sky. The water trickled down in lazy streams, carrying away particles of soil that had once been packed with care by hands long stilled. In the quiet fields below, wildflowers pushed through the cracks, their petals unfolding in hues of pale yellow and soft purple, a subtle reclamation by nature's patient hand. The air was filled with the subtle fragrance of blooming prairie plants, mingling with the musty undertone of decaying thatch from abandoned structures. One could almost hear the faint creak of wooden beams settling into the ground, a sound as unobtrusive as a distant heartbeat. Yet, it was the absence that spoke most eloquently. Where once the air had hummed with the rhythm of daily life, the steady thump of pestles grinding corn, the murmur of voices in council now only the wind wandered freely. The builders, those skilled artisans who had raised these earthworks with nothing but their tools and determination, were gone, leaving behind tunics that might have been left to fade on forgotten lines. Picture one such garment, its threads unraveling in the breeze, catching the light of a waxing moon like a ghostly echo. The fabric, softened by years of wear, retained the faint scent of smoke from hearths that had warmed generations, a comforting reminder of warmth in the cool evening air. As the decades turned, the decline unfolded with a serene inevitability. Archaeological whispers from Cahokia's reports paint a picture of environmental shifts, subtle and unassuming, that may have played their part. Perhaps the rivers, in their eternal dance, altered their courses, leaving the fertile floodplains less generous than before. The soil, once so bountiful, might have grown weary under the weight of sustained harvests, its nutrients ebbing away like a tide retreating from the shore. One can envision the fields in the golden hour, their grasses swaying with a hypnotic rhythm, the sun casting long shadows that crept across the mounds like fingers of twilight. The air would carry the crisp tang of autumn leaves, a sensory tapestry that wrapped around the senses, inviting reflection rather than alarm. But amidst this calm unraveling, a mystery lingers, as elusive as mist rising from the river at dawn. The true causes of Cahokia's decline remain unrecorded, lost to the sands of time that bury as gently as they reveal. Historians and archaeologists, drawing from the careful excavations at sites like those documented in the reports from the Cahokia Mound State Historic Site, speculate on possibilities that drift like shadows. Was it the slow encroachment of climate changes, with droughts that parched the earth like a forgotten dream? Or perhaps the subtle pressures of social shifts, where communities dispersed like seeds on the wind, seeking new horizons? The mystery adds a layer of quiet intrigue, a puzzle wrapped in the serenity of the landscape. One might stand atop a mound at dusk, feeling the cool earth beneath one's feet, and ponder how such a vibrant society could fade without a trace, its story etched only in the contours of the land. In this detachment, there is a subtle wit to the passage of time, for nature, in her infinite patience, reclaims what was once hers with a gracious hand. The crumbling earth, soft and yielding, invites one to trace its surfaces, where the texture speaks of cycles unending. The quiet fields, alive with the chirp of crickets and the distant call of owls, offer a lullaby of their own, reminding us that decline is but a phase in the grand rhythm of existence. No dramatic upheavals mark this story. Instead, it unfolds with the gentle persistence of a river carving its path. Consider for a moment the sensory details that linger in such a place, the warmth of the sun-baked soil underfoot, contrasting with the cool whisper of evening air, the faint, earthy aroma of moss-covered stones, mingled with the sweet scent of wild berries ripening in hidden thickets. Even the visual tapestry, the way moonlight plays across the mounds, casting ethereal glows that soften sharp edges, evokes a sense of peaceful transition. Archaeological insights from reports, such as those from the University of Illinois excavations, suggest that the Mississippian culture's apex had waned by the mid-14th century, with evidence of reduced occupation and altered settlement patterns. These findings, pieced together from layers of soil and artifacts, hint at a gradual depopulation, perhaps influenced by factors like resource depletion or shifting trade networks, all enveloped in the same calm veil. As the stars wheeled overhead, the builders' legacy endured in the quiet resilience of the mounds. Their worn tunics, symbolic of labor and endurance, might be imagined fluttering in the wind like flags of a bygone era, their threads whispering tales of dedication. Yet, in the absence of definitive answers, the mystery endures, a soothing enigma that invites contemplation rather than distress. It is a reminder that some stories are meant to fade into the landscape, becoming part of the Earth's eternal song. And so, as the night deepens and the first hints of dawn tease the horizon, we leave the silent mounds to their repose, carrying with us the echoes of Cahokia's decline. In this tranquil narrative, we turn our thoughts toward what lies beyond, where new mysteries await in the unfolding tapestry of history. In the quiet heart of Illinois, where the broad Mississippi River whispers secrets to the wind-swept plains, the ancient mounds rise like gentle guardians from the earth. These earthen hills, crafted by hands long vanished, stand as silent testaments to a civilization that shaped the land with purpose and mystery. Imagine the scene at Cahokia, where modern seekers gently brush away the veils of time, uncovering fragments of a world that once thrived in harmony with the rhythms of nature. Here, under a sky painted in soft hues of dusk, the legacy of the Mississippian Mound builders unfolds like a forgotten lullaby, its notes echoing through the ages in the form of rediscovered artifacts. The story begins not with clamor, but with the subtle stir of morning mist curling around the base of Monk's Mound, the largest of Cahokia's earthen pyramids. Archaeologists, clad in earth-toned garments that blend with the surrounding grasses, approach their work with a reverence that feels almost reverent, as if the ground itself holds its breath. One might picture Drive, Elena Vargas, a seasoned researcher with a gentle smile and steady hands, kneeling beside a freshly exposed pit. Her team has been methodically sifting through layers of soil, each stroke of the brush revealing the passage of centuries. The air carries a faint, earthy aroma, a mix of damp clay and sun-warmed stones, mingling with the distant scent of wildflowers blooming along the riverbank. It's a soothing ritual, this unveiling, where time slows to a crawl and the world narrows to the delicate dance of light on ancient surfaces. As the first shard emerges, glinting faintly in the filtered sunlight, one can't help but feel a subtle wit in the universe's timing. Here is a piece of pottery, its curve smoothed by hands that shaped it perhaps 8 centuries ago, now cradled in gloved fingers like a long-lost heirloom. The clay, once fired in hearths that crackled under starlit skies, has taken on a dusty patina, soft to the touch yet resilient, whispering tales of communal feasts and ceremonial rites. The surface bears faint etchings, intricate patterns of spirals and geometric forms that hint at a sophisticated artistry, drawing from the natural world around them. UNESCO reports from the site's designation as a World Heritage Landmark in 1982 detail how such artifacts reflect the Mississippian people's advanced societal structures, their mounds serving as centers for agriculture, governance, and spiritual life. Museum records from the Cahokia Mound State Historic Site echo this, preserving similar pieces that showcase the builders' mastery over their environment, using local resources to create enduring symbols of their culture. Yet, as these discoveries unfold, a deeper layer of intrigue emerges, wrapped in the mystery of forgotten builder tales. What stories did these people tell around their fires, under the vast canopy of stars that still glitter above the plains? One artifact, a particularly ornate pot with a rim etched in what appears to be symbolic script, sparks quiet speculation among the team. Unlike the more straightforward tools cataloged in museum archives, this piece seems to guard a secret language, its markings evoking images of celestial events or mythical journeys. Perhaps it spoke of the sky bear, a figure drawn from oral traditions pieced together by historians, where the builders envisioned their world as a bridge between earth and the heavens. The mystery lies not in grand enigmas, but in the subtle absences, the untold narratives that slip through the cracks of time. Why were certain tales never inscribed? Or did they vanish with the winds that now rustle through the tall grasses? It's a puzzle that invites contemplation, much like a lullaby that fades into dreams, leaving one to wonder about the whispers that once filled these hills. The excavation proceeds with a calming rhythm, each layer peeled back, revealing more of this legacy. Dr. Vargas pauses to examine a cluster of shards, their edges worn smooth by the earth's embrace over centuries. The pottery's colors, muted shades of terracotta and ash gray, catch the light in a way that evokes the glow of a setting sun on the river. One can almost feel the weight of history in the air, a gentle pressure that speaks of generations who tilled the soil and raised these mounds as monuments to their ingenuity. According to UNESCO's comprehensive assessments, the Mississippian culture, flourishing between 800 and 1600 CE, left behind not just physical structures but a blueprint for sustainable living. Their agricultural terraces and water management systems influencing modern ecological practices in the region. Museum exhibits at the Illinois State Museum reinforce this, displaying reconstructed pots that mirror those found at Cahokia, each one a testament to the builder's deep connection to the land. As the day wanes, the team gathers around a makeshift table, the artifacts laid out like pieces of a mosaic waiting to be assembled. The air grows cooler, carrying the faint scent of pine from nearby woods, and the soft hum of insects provides a natural symphony. There's a subtle wit in how these ancient items, once buried and forgotten, now spark new stories among the researchers. One shard, unexpectedly vibrant with flecks of mica that glint like stars, draws laughter and awe. How clever, they muse, for the builders to embed such surprises, turning ordinary clay into something almost magical. This legacy extends beyond the mounds, weaving into the fabric of modern Illinois life. Schools and community centers draw inspiration from Cahokia's history, incorporating it into educational programs that teach about cultural preservation and environmental stewardship, as documented in various museum outreach initiatives. Yet, amid the discoveries, the mystery deepens. What became of the tales that animated these artifacts? Did the builders recount epics of heroic deeds or simple parables of daily life, passed down through generations until they faded like echoes in the wind? One particular find, a pottery fragment with an unusual motif of intertwined vines and celestial symbols, fuels this intrigue. Historians, relying on cross-referenced records from the American Museum of Natural History, suggest it might relate to seasonal rituals, where the people aligned their lives with the cycles of the moon and stars. But the full story eludes grasp, leaving a space for imagination to wander. It's a soothing enigma, one that invites reflection rather than urgency. Much like the gentle flow of the Mississippi that borders the site, the sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the mounds, and the team works on, their movements deliberate and unhurried. The soil, rich with the scent of minerals and ancient roots, yields more treasures a small, intact vessel with a lid that fits perfectly, its surface cool and smooth under fingertips. Sensory details abound. The faint grit of dust on skin, the metallic tang in the air from tools, the visual play of light on curved edges. These elements paint a picture of continuity, where the Mississippian legacy endures not just in stone and clay, but in the ongoing quest to understand. UNESCO's ongoing monitoring reports highlight how such excavations contribute to global heritage conservation, ensuring that the builders' innovations in community organization and resource use remain relevant today. As evening approaches, the archaeologists pause to share observations, their voices low and melodic, blending with the natural sounds around them. There's a subtle humor in the way a particularly stubborn shard resists cleaning, as if playfully guarding its secrets. This legacy, so vividly alive in the artifacts, reminds us that the Mississippian mound builders were more than their creations. They were storytellers, innovators, and dreamers whose influence lingers in the very soil of Illinois. And in this peaceful unraveling, the mystery of their forgotten tales continues to beckon, a gentle invitation to explore further. Yet, as the stars begin to emerge, casting a soft glow over the mounds, our thoughts turn gently toward what lies beyond this chapter. The echoes of Cahokia's legacy fade into the night, preparing the way for new horizons in our journey through time.